Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was in High School of the Dead. If you guys enjoyed this what if, then comment, like and subscribe. Let's go. Also the video goal is 10 likes, so let me know that you're interested in the series and you want the next part. Then go ahead and check out the other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave. Also share the video with your friends and link in the description. So let's go. Time: 11:46 p.m. Takashi sat in the living room with the TV on. He kept going through the channels to see that none of them were on air. A sigh escaped the boy's mouth. He was the only one awake due to not being able to sleep. A knock came from the door, which drew Takashi's attention. Another knock came from it. As he grabbed his bat, he got up and walked to the door. He quietly approached the door and looked through the peephole. All of a sudden, the door busted open, which hit the poor teen smack on the face. He was forced to drop the bat, as he placed his hands on his face and hunched over. What the fuck? He nearly shouted, but not too loud to where it woke the others up. Maybe you should learn to lock doors. Takashi froze for a second and recognized that serious voice, as he stood back straight up and removed his hands off his face. Naruto? The teen asked, as he examined the blonde's new attire: blue jeans, gray short sleeve shirt with a sleeveless leather jacket, and his black sandals. Nice look. Thanks. I've actually haven't seen clothes like these before, he mentioned, as he looked down at himself. Takashi cocked an eyebrow. Wait. You're saying you don't know what jeans are? And leather jackets? Yeah. Takashi gently face-palmed himself, while Naruto walked past him. Takashi quickly turned around and saw the blonde walking into the living room. He shook his head and went to join the blonde. Naruto plopped down onto the single chair and let out a tiring sigh. Takashi stood in front of the blonde. Where did you go? Naruto closed his eyes. War. Yes. When I went to the clothing store, I ran into a couple of thugs. Then shortly later, there was a bunch of noises outside and then we all went out. That's when I saw several of the living fighting against the dead. It was like a war. It didn't take long for them to overrun the living. Some ran to safety, while some of them stood to fight. Those that stayed went down laughing like maniacs. Takashi's eyes narrowed. So you took care of them on your own? Like in one-man army? Naruto shrugged. I guess you can put it that way. Takashi was at awe. You really are something else. Let me fill you in with something. When I took care of them, there were two more that came from nowhere. These two weren't like the others. They were massive and pretty tough. I couldn't cut through any part of their body, except their head. So, there aren't just normal walkers. Right. There seems to be some more special ones out there. I see. It's even more dangerous than I expected. Silence roamed through the area, but since the blonde's been gone for the whole day, he was curious of what happened here when he was gone. So, did anything happen? Takashi shook his head. No. We all just stayed here and had the day to relax. Sounds fun. Naruto. The blonde looked at the teen. I'm sorry for the way I jumped you earlier today when you kicked Mr. Shido's group out. Naruto's eyes narrowed. It's fine. I'm just trying to protect you all. Takashi smiled weakly. Where are from? The blonde cocked an eyebrow and then began to remember of the conversation he had with Seiko the other night. All you need to know is that I'm not from around here. Takashi chuckled. Well, we all kind of figured that by the way you handle them so easily. And with those little tricks you do, that's not normal. Naruto sighed. In your world, of course it's not. Takashi questioningly looked at the blonde. Where were you from then? Naruto sighed. I really don't feel like going through this again. Again? Whom did you talk to about this? That's none of your concern. But, I will tell you this, I'm not from this planet. Where are you from then? A sigh escaped the blonde's mouth. I don't feel like repeating myself. Takashi frowned. Looks like I'll have to ask everyone and find out the harder way. A growling sound alerted the teen. What was that? Takashi asked, as he looked at the blonde to see that his eyes were slightly widened and saw a feint of red across his cheeks. Is there anything to eat? Takashi couldn't help but laugh seeing the blonde feeling slightly embarrassed. Why yeah, he continued laughing. I think. His laughing began to die down a little. There might be some leftover ramen. Even though Naruto kept his cool around the group, his mood brightened hearing ramen, and shot to the kitchen with incredible speed that it managed to knock Takashi to the ground. Time: 9:46 a.m. Seiko stirred in her sleep, but then her eyes opened. She had the look on her face that showed that she was still half asleep. She wrapped her arms around the pillow and planted her head back on it, but little did she know that the door to the room opened. A smile formed on her face, as she snuggled her head against the pillow. All of a sudden, she was hit on the head and immediately jolted up and saw that a pillow hit her. She looked at the door entrance to see someone she hasn't seen all day yesterday. "Get up," Naruto said. Seiko frowned at him. Was that really necessary? She asked, as she stared at his new outfit. Naruto kept his normal bored expression look on his face. "Yes," he answered, as he walked out of the room. If the blonde had stood there any longer, he would have seen her uncover herself from the sheets to show him that she was wearing nothing but a thong. Seiko sat on the side edge of the bed and looked down at her clothing lying on the floor. With Naruto, the blonde stood in the middle of the living room, while Takashi, Alice, Saya, Rei, Shizuka, Kota, and Kaji sitting around examining the blonde's new attire. Naruto was already getting impatient waiting on the other two to join them. "What is it you called us out here for?" Saya asked. "I'll tell you when the other two get in here," Naruto answered. Shizuka yawned. "But why did you have to wake us up this early?" the busted nurse asked, as she rubbed her eyes. Nothing came from the blonde, while the others frowned at him. "You mean to tell me that you woke us up early just for the hell of it?" Rei asked. "I'll explain soon," he answered. "I want to know now. I was enjoying my sleep," Rei nearly shouted. Naruto tensed a bit from the brunette's shouting, but waved it off and remained standing waiting on the other two. A couple of seconds later, Seiko came walking in wearing the same clothing from yesterday. "Why did you have to wake me?" The purple-haired beauty looked around the room to see almost everyone sitting around, up. Shortly after Seiko's appearance, Yuki came in wearing her school uniform. The look on her face looked to be rather frustrated. She instantly glared at the blonde. "You're lucky you're hot or else I would be beating the shit out of you." Naruto cocked an eyebrow, but then decided to get with the task at hand. "Okay, listen. This is only optional if you want, that's if you want to keep wearing the same smelly clothing you all have." Saya smiled lightly. Seeing where this was going, "Do you mean?" "Yes. There's a clothing store not far from here. I'll take one group at a time though." Shizuka was the first to respond. "I won't have to go. I'll just use my friend's clothing." Other than Shizuka, the guys, and Seiko, the other girls cheered among themselves. "However, I'll be choosing the group." Fine, whatever," they all said at the same time. Naruto looked at everyone, but remembered that he didn't get everyone's names. Actually, first four out the door goes. Naruto was forced to be spun around in a full 360. He shook his head and saw that Rei and Yuki were the first ones out. Everyone was pretty shocked at how the two girls were so fast that it made Naruto fully spin around. Kota and Alice were next to get up. "Meet you outside then," Kota said, as him and the little girl ran for the door. "I guess we'll go when you all get back then," Takashi said. Naruto was still a bit shocked at the two girls, but then rubbed it off. "All right then," he said, as he went after them. Rei and the others all stood in front of the giant wall of the dead and looked up at it. "How are we going to get over?" Yuki asked. Rei pouted and grunted. "I want to get some new clothing." Kota sighed. "We know. But please stopping acting like." Rei glanced at where Kota was and saw that him and Alice were gone. Where did they go? Yuki looked around. "I don't." The two of them both felt an arm wrap around their midsection and felt themselves being pulled. They each looked to their side and saw Naruto holding onto them. They both slightly blushed. "Naruto, what are you?" Yuki couldn't finish what she was about to say, as they were now both high above the ground. The two girls looked down and couldn't believe that Naruto could even jump this high. A smile came upon the two girls' face and enjoyed looking down at whatever was below. Their little enjoyment came to an end, as they landed on the other side of the wall. The blonde let go of them and walked on out ahead. "Let's go," he said. Kota and the others stayed back a bit. "That was so cool," Kota shouted, as him and Alice followed the blonde. Yuki and Rei looked at each other for a quick second and then followed the others. Moments later, the group came upon the building, but they didn't go in right away. They all looked around the area to see all the dead bodies lying around. "Geez, it's like a bloodbath here," Kota mentioned. Naruto walked into the store not wanting to see the results of yesterday's war. while the others slowly followed him, but were more into looking at the scene around them. This is a disaster, Ray said. The others remained quiet, as they eventually found themselves walking into the store. Naruto was standing in the middle of a path, but then he was forced to spin in a full 360 once again. His eyes were slightly widened and turned around to see Koda with Alice just standing there. He turned back around to see that the two girls were out of sight. Sheesh. They're just like. Flashback. Come on, hurry. Naruto walked slowly with his hands in his pockets and kept his sight on the two girls ahead of him. He saw Ino and Sakura standing there waiting for him. You two are hard to keep up with. Ino and Sakura couldn't wait for the sluggish blonde. They ran up to him in a blink of an eye, as they both grabbed his wrists and ran for the store up ahead. Naruto couldn't keep his feet in sync with the girls and instantly tripped onto his stomach, which the poor blonde was now officially being dragged. His face sliding on the dirt road was starting to burn his face. Stop. He tried to shout, but the two girls were too excited and didn't hear him. In a matter of seconds, the blonde felt that they came to a stop. Before he got to look up, his face was forced to hit the ground. Naruto placed the palm of his hands on the ground and shot himself up to his feet to see that the two girls were gone. Sheesh. Now I see why Shikamaru says that girls can be troublesome at times. The blonde said to himself, as he dusted his hands off. End of flashback. Naruto squinted his eyes and placed his right hand on his forehead. Koda jumped a bit. Naruto, he called, as he and Alice ran over to him. Naruto held his left arm out and waved back at the two, which made them stop. Don't worry about me, just go change. But, just go. I'm fine. Koda stood there for a bit and then nodded, as he looked down at Alice. Come on Alice, let's go get you some clothes. Alice smiled and began to laugh lightly. Yay. She shouted, as her and Koda went ahead. Naruto shook off the minor pain and brought his arm back down to his side. Why does this hurt? The blonde turned around to watch and make sure that nothing comes in. His arms folded across his chest. Man, now I feel like I'm back on guard duty when we were at the cage summit. Flashback. All the cages were in the meeting room discussing on what to do for the war. Each cage had their bodyguards hiding high above them, all except Naruto. The blonde decided to stand outside of the room and watch the hall. After a few seconds, the blonde would stomp around a bit. He kept getting impatient of how long this meeting was actually taking. Before they ever came here, Tsunade was determining on whom to take with her to the summit. Her first choice was Shizune, of course, since that was her assistant. When it came down to the last one, she couldn't think of whom to take. In her office, Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi, Yamato, and Guy stood around. The busty Hokage looked at each and every one of them and thought deeply of whom to take. It was real quiet, but that didn't last long, as Naruto volunteered himself. Now, he's stuck here standing at the entrance of the meeting room. A sigh escaped the blonde's lips. This is taking forever. He complained. A light chuckle came from behind him. You sure haven't changed a bit. A feminine voice said. Naruto turned around to see a familiar face and smiled. Temari. Shouldn't you be in there? The blonde woman lightly shook her head. I thought you could use some company. After all, I could see that you were bored since you kept walking back and forth. Naruto lifted his right arm up and scratched the back of his head. Oops. He chuckled. Plus, I never got to actually thank you for rescuing Gaara. Not once, but twice. Back at the Konoha invasion, when you beat him, you opened his eyes and realized that he had people that actually cared for him. He's been so calm and relaxed since then. Naruto lightly smiled, while listening to the blonde, and when you saved him from the Akatsuki. Not only did Granny Chio sacrifice herself to bring him back, but if it wasn't for you, I don't think we would have retrieved him at all. Temari backed the blonde up away from being seen from the people in the meeting room and placed her hands on the blonde's shoulder. As she gave him a seductive look, for that, she slid her arms up to where she wrapped them around his neck and closed the gap between them slowly. Thank you. Naruto. The sister of the cage closed her eyes, as she tilted her head a bit, while Naruto was pretty shocked to see Temari coming onto him. His brain registered the moment and reacted, as he wrapped his arms around her waist. He closed his eyes too, as the two blondes' lips were just a mere inch from each other. End of flashback. Naruto sighed, as his arms came unfolded and rested on his sides again. Instead, he brought His hands up slightly and slid them into his pockets. His head hung low a bit and stared down at the ground. Another sigh came from him, but then a scream came from within the store. He quickly turned around and was gone in an instant. The blonde walked around looking for the source of the scream. He knew who it was since he found Kota, Alice, and Ray all together helping the child look for some clothing first, but due to the scream, the three of them worried of what happened to Yuki. Naruto found himself now standing in front of an entrance, which led to the changing rooms. He never came upon this the first time he was here, but he walked in and the first thing he saw was a couple of corpses lying around. Shit. I should have scanned the building first before letting them go off. Looking around, he saw some of the doors open. Some of the rooms were empty, while some of them had blood and organs in them. His eyes fixed themselves on one room, which he could see someone in there. The door was slightly open and yet, there was no sign of blood or anything. He walked over to it quietly and placed his hand on the door. Slowly, he pushed the door open and walked in. His eyes slightly widened, as he was looking at something he hadn't been expecting. Yuki stood before him wearing a pair of short jean shorts and a dark green tank top, which seemed a bit short since it showed her belly and not to mention that it was a bit tight to where her breasts were highly noticeable. Naruto blushed lightly, as Yuki smiled at him, so you do have a weak side. She said. The blonde just stood there, while his eyes kept glancing at her tits. Yuki caught him and smiled even more. You like what you see? She asked. Naruto began to swear to himself in his mind, damn it pervy sage. I'm really starting to pick up his traits more. Yuki crossed her arms and grabbed the shoulder straps, as she slid them down her shoulders. Naruto quickly placed his hands over hers to prevent her from continuing. Yuki tilted her head a bit and gave him an innocent look. What's wrong? Did you want to help me instead? Is that why you stopped me? Naruto just looked at her and lightly shook his head. Why did you scream? Yuki frowned slightly, seeing that he was trying to avoid her actions, because of the mess around here. I don't know why I screamed actually, but it seemed like my body did on its own. A sweat formed on the back of the blonde's head. He then examined her up and down her body, which she blushed lightly, seeing that he was basically checking her out. His eyes then looked her in the eyes. Find a different shirt, he said, as he turned his back to her so that he could leave. Yuki got herself lost by looking at his strange eyes. She thought they were beautiful, but then she shook her head. What? Why? She asked. The blonde remained standing there and didn't turn to face her. It's too revealing. Yuki cocked an eyebrow and stared at the back of the blonde's head. You're starting to sound like my father. If the blonde didn't have his back facing her, she would have seen the light smile on his face. Well, we're in an all-out war here and you want to wear that. This isn't your normal world anymore. Plus, if we ended up running into a group of living, they'll surely try to take you, even though they probably would even if you weren't wearing that. Not to mention, I don't want you wearing that around the others. Surely you don't want to see that little girl see you wearing that, would you? That would be a bad example. Yuki's eyes were widened from listening to his little speech, but she narrowed them and smiled. You really remind me of my dad. This time, the blonde turned around to face her. See, my dad would always be on me of what I would do. Flashback. Bye Dad, Yuki called out, just before she opened the door to leave for school. Yuki. The teen stopped before she opened the door and turned around to see her dad. Yes, father? She asked, as she saw the disappointed look on his face. Her father is a light-colored man that was pretty lazy, but he deeply cared for his daughter. He wore a pair of glasses and wore a robe colored dark blue and green with checkerboard-like patterns. The waist of it was tied to keep it on securely, and he also wore a pair of dark gray slippers. He pointed down at her, but she didn't follow his point, buttoned it up. Yuki then looked down and saw that her blouse was open to reveal a lot of cleavage. She looked back up at him. But it's hot outside. If I wear it buttoned up, I'm going to get exhausted from the heat. Her father's eyes narrowed. Sweetie. I understand, but you're showing too much. You're making yourself look like a girl with a lot of needs. Yuki sighed. But Dad, what else can I do? It's so hot outside, she whined. Suddenly, her father walked away, leaving his daughter in a confused state. Shortly though, he came back with a bottle of water and handed it to her. Simple. Just take this to cool off. Yuki took it and smiled. So you want me to make it worse by pouring this on me to cool me down? Her father laughed, now you're just being a smart ass. Yuki kept her smile on, as she placed the bottle down and buttoned the rest of her blouse up. She picked the bottle up and opened the door, as she glanced back at her father with a smile. Thanks Dad, she said, as she walked out and closed the door behind her. End of flashback. Naruto kept a straight face on, while Yuki actually had a small smile on. I loved my dad so much, but I don't know where he is, she said, as her smile slowly turned into a sad frown. What does your dad do? Well, I don't exactly know. When it comes to work, he usually works in his office room and he never lets me in. I've never seen it before, and when I'm home alone, it's always locked. Must be a big secret. Why yeah. An awkward silence came upon the two that only lasted for a split second. Wait here, Naruto said, as he walked out of the changing room. Yuki crossed her arms across her chest to prevent them from standing out so much. Her face was a bit saddened and somewhat happy. Not only is he sexy, but he even listens. He cares for us, and even though he hardly knows us, I feel as if I can talk to him about anything. A smile came upon her face, as she quietly giggled to herself. His eyes, I've never seen eyes like those before, but they're so beautiful. She leaned her back against the wall and slid down to where she sat down on the little corner seat. Suddenly, the blonde stepped in again with a shirt in his hands. The shirt is short-sleeved, that's colored dark red, but not only did he bring a shirt, he brought back a bra with matching panties. She looked up at him to see a light embarrassing blush across his cheeks. Yuki couldn't help but laugh at the blonde. Why did you bring me those? She laughed. Naruto's blush began to darken lightly. I thought you could use some clean undergarments. I already changed into a different set. She laughed, but then stopped, as she got up and went up to him. She grabbed the bottom of the tank top she wore. I can show you if you like, she said seductively, as she began to lift it up her body. Naruto began to curse at himself in his head again and felt his little friend waking up. He shook his head and handed her the shirt. Just change, he said, as he walked out. Yuki pouted. I was so close, she shouted quietly. Naruto walked back out to his post and kept an eye out of whatever would show up. His bored expression had managed to take back over after what had happened back at the changing rooms. Hey, Naruto. The blonde turned around to see the short chubby boy. Kota was now wearing a pair of camouflage cargo shorts with a black t-shirt and a pair of white sneakers. What is it? The blonde came to a stop, trying to remember if he had heard his name from the others or not. It's Kota. Oh, you're the one that said that Shido would always pick on you, right? Yeah. Why would a teacher want to pick on a student? The blonde then began to remember how he was a child and how he got picked on or hated by teachers in the academy. Well, Mr. Shido was a teacher of mine, and when class was over. Flashback. Kota was sitting in his desk even though class was over. When the bell rang, the door to the class was closed. Only him, a couple of other students, and Mr. Shido were inside. The students grabbed a desk and surrounded the chubby boy and all began to make fun of him. Why don't you ever work out? You need to quit eating like a pig and drop that fat. If you learned how to quit being a pussy, and if you weren't such a fat ass, we wouldn't be here making fun of you. But you're so weak and you just absorb it all in. Footsteps drew closer to the group, as everyone looked up to see Mr. Shido. Now Kota. You know, they're right. If you weren't so weak, they wouldn't be making fun of you. But you choose to be the weak, lazy, fat ass that you are. The students began to smile. Yeah, fat fuck, they all said at once. Kota just lied his head down on his desk, wishing that they would just leave him alone. End of flashback. It would happen every day. I even tried telling the principal, and she even spoke with Mr. Shido herself. But he would tell her that he has no clue what she was talking about. And since then, they've been pushing me around physically and kept calling me a cry baby for telling on them even though it didn't work. Naruto felt bad for the boy. Kota. How long has this been going on? About a year. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. A year. And you've been dealing with them? Wow. I'm pretty impressed. I used to be picked on all the time when I was younger. People always avoided me, no one ever wanted to be my friend. They all accused me of doing something that I didn't do. Really? Kota asked. Yeah, but I dealt with it, and when time passed on, I ended up making plenty of friends. However, I can see that you want revenge. The blonde walked to him and placed a hand on his head. When it comes down to when we see him again and if he's being taken down by them, you're going to have to kill him. Kota smiled widely. I've been planning on that for quite some time now. Okay. We're ready to go back. Naruto looked past the blonde to see Ray wearing a pair of dark blue short gym shorts, not too short, but just short, with a white t-shirt and black sneakers. He then saw little Alice wearing dark pink pants with a dark purple shirt that had a picture of a dog's face on the front of it. She also wore a pair of black shoes and she had 3 blue bracelets around her left wrists. They didn't say anything, but the little girl found them pretty and just wanted to wear them. Yuki was next to them wearing the same jean shorts with the red shirt that he picked out for her. He saw her smile and lightly smiled back at her to see that she chose his picking. Kota turned around and looked at Yuki to see that the jean shorts were hugging tightly onto her bosom, that it showed her curves. The chubby boy blushed. Okay. Are you all ready to head back? Naruto asked. Yeah. Just one more thing though, Yuki said, as an evil grin came upon her face. Time. 1:28 p.m. Takashi sat in the living room with Seiko, Kaji, and Saya. Shizuka ended up going back to sleep since she didn't like being waken up. It was just quiet throughout the living room. Nothing came to any of their mind of what to talk about. Saya sat with her leg crossed over the other, while Seiko sat on the couch and just stared at the TV that was turned off. Takashi sat next to her and leaned forward so that he could just stare down at the floor. Kaji on the other hand was just lying on the floor. The door opened, which the three heard, and looked toward the hall. They heard voices, which weren't hard to pick up who they were. Ray, Alice, Yuki, and Kota came into the living room. Ray giggled just a bit and ran at Takashi. Ray sat on the boy's lap, which made him blush. Why, you look comfortable in that, he mentioned. Ray smiled. Yeah, I can move more freely in this. Alice came in all cheery and heard barking coming down the hall. She turned to see Zeke running at her, and just when he was in reach, he jumped up at her, which she caught him and laughed. Kota jolted back to the safe where he had put the guns back and went into his little world. Yuki came in with a big smile on her face and sat next to Saya. The pink-haired teen was confused of why she was so happy. What's got you all so happy? Oh, nothing, she said. Naruto finally came in and everyone looked at him. They all started to laugh at him since he had carried all their old clothes back. He had a bunch in both his arms, while the rest of them were sitting on his head. The blonde lifted his arms up, which caused the clothes to fall from his hold, and then leaned his head forward, which caused those clothes to fall. He saw that they were all laughing at him, but he couldn't help but smile a bit. Oh wait, Yuki said, as she walked up to the blonde. Naruto's smile turned into his straight look. Yuki smiled at him and stared into his eyes, as she snaked her arm around him and reached up to his neck. She slid her hand into the back of his shirt and pulled out her black and red lace bra. You forgot this, she said, as she dropped it to the pile. Everyone began to laugh again, as Yuki went back to sit next to Saya. Naruto stood there with a faint blush on his face. Luckily the others didn't see. Okay, enough. Are the rest of you ready? The blonde asked, but no one answered since they were still laughing. Naruto's right eye began to twitch and got tired of waiting, as he walked out of the household. The blonde walked to the gate and stopped, as he heard the others calling him. Wait, Naruto. We were just having a little fun, Takashi said. The blonde turned his head and looked to the side to see Takashi, Saya, Seiko, and Kaji joining him. I know. I was just getting annoyed. Annoyed of what? Saya asked. Annoyed of you for not coming when I asked if you were ready, he answered, as he slid open the gate and walked past it with the other four right behind him. Once they were on the outside, the blonde closed the gate behind them and saw that the four were just staring up at the wall of dead. Wow, you made this that one night? Kaji asked. Okay. Just how do you expect us to get over this wall if we're going? Saya was cut off, as she was now in the air. She looked down and saw Seiko and Takashi still in their spot. Looking to her right, she saw the blonde holding onto her. In just a split second after finding out she got up so high, she was now on the ground, along with Kaji. She dusted herself off. Just whom the hell do you think? She stopped to see that the blonde wasn't in sight. Naruto appeared back on the other side to see a shocked Seiko and Takashi. He walked in between them and wrapped an arm around their waist. Hold on. And in a split second, they were on the other side. Naruto let them go and walked on ahead to lead them to the store. They all looked at each other, but decided not to ask any questions and followed him. A few minutes later, the group approached the store. Seiko and the others looked around the scene to see a total mess. Is this what you meant? Takashi asked. Naruto kept walking ahead. Yeah. This was an all-out war. Wow. It's like a bloodbath here. Kaji mentioned. Come on. Enough looking around, just please hurry up. Naruto said. They all thought they had enough examining anyway and walked past the blonde. Naruto turned around watching the outside to make sure there were no intruders. Time skip. 15 minutes later. Kaji saw Naruto just standing outside keeping watch and decided to take this chance to know his savior a bit more. Kaji now wore a pair of black khaki pants, black and gray shoes, and a dark blue short-sleeve shirt. He still wore his glasses and was now carrying his previous outfit. He approached the blonde and realized how serious he was keeping watch. His body was so still, no sign of movement. His legs were slightly separate, but mainly stood up straight. He walked up and stopped next to the blonde, while looking outside like him. So, you're obviously not from here. Where exactly are you from? Kaji asked. Kaji looked at the blonde to see that he had his arms crossed and that he had that same bored expression on his face. The wind picked up a bit, which blew his hair to the side. I'm from a different world. As I told someone before, your world is completely different. So a different world, huh? Do you know how you ended up here? The blonde shook his head. All I know is that I woke up in an alley. That's it. Do you remember anything from your world? I do, but I can only speak of so little of it. Oh. Well, what was your world like? My world, the majority of people, including myself, grew up to become shinobi. Ninja. Yes. We were always at war and I was a part of it. There have been 3 shinobi world wars, but then there was this man named Madara. He's a part of an organization called the Akatsuki. Their goal was to capture these beasts called bijus. There are 9 of them and they've captured 7. One day, we were called to a meeting. Oh, yeah, I'm from a place called the Elemental Nations. To be more exact, the Fire Country in the village of Konoha. Now, there are 4 other lands. The land of Earth has Iwagakure. The land of Lightning has Kumogakure. Land of Water has Kurigakure. And the last one, the land of Wind has Sunagakure. Each of these villages has a leader that's ranked Kage. We were all divided equally in order to create a balance to our world. Okay. So, when it came to the meeting, was it just the Kages? You're somewhat right. It was the Kage from their village, with 2 bodyguards. I happened to be one of those guards for our leader. Anyway, we were all gathered at a place called the 3 Wolves, which is where the Land of Iron resides. The Land of Iron didn't have shinobi, but instead they had samurai, and instead of a Kage, there was a general named Mifune. He called an alliance and wanted to get all of us on the same page to stop the Akatsuki. As the meeting went on, Madara decided to make an appearance. He started talking about this plan of his and demanded the 2 remaining bijus, but we simply didn't hand them over. That was when he declared the 4th Great Ninja World War. A 4th war just because he couldn't get these 2 beasts. What were these beasts like? Well, these beasts were special. As you know, there are 9 of them. Each one of them had special abilities. They had their own names and depending on what number they were, they had that many tails exactly. For instance, Ikibi is the 1-tailed beast, Nibi the 2 tails, Sanbi the 3 tails, Yonbi the 4 tails, Gobi the 5 tails, Rokubi the 6 tails, Nanabi the 7 tails, Hachibi the 8 tails, and finally, Kyubi the 9 tails, which is the strongest of them all. Each of these beasts was sealed in a person. And since the Akatsuki has captured 7 of them, they captured that person and extracted the beast from within, which ended up killing the container. That's awful. Why were they after those beasts? They're after them because, once they capture all 9 of them, that's when they can merge them all together to form the Jubi. Jubi. Yes. Known as the 10 tails. All 9 of the tailed beasts are but portions divided from the Jubi. Madara wants to bring back the Jubi so that he can become the Jinchuriki of it and have the entire world in his control. Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki is the container of the Biju. I see. So, the Hachibi and Kyubi are the ones he's after. Yes. Who are the containers of those tailed beasts? The Hachibi is sealed into a friend of mine and a trainer of mine. His name's Killer Bee. Killer Bee. What's with that name? To be honest, I don't know. He's actually a really cool guy. Just that, he raps and that it can be a bit strange, but at times I tried it out. It didn't come out too great, but for some reason, he liked it. Kaji laughed a bit and smiled. He sounds fun to be around. Naruto chuckled a bit. He is. What was his town like? He lived in Kumo. His brother is the Raikage. Raikage must be the leader of that village. What's the other Kages? Well, there's Tsuchikage of Iwa. He's a short old man that happens to have back problems. There's Kage of Suna. He's a very good friend of mine that used to be the container of the Ikibi. Wait, the Kage used to be a container. How is he still alive then? Someone from his village named Chio sacrificed her life to bring him back to life. I ended up bringing his body back, and that was when she decided to bring him back. Oh, anyway, there's the Raikage, which happens to be a reckless guy at times. Mizukage of Kiri, might I say, is a beauty. And then there's the Hokage of my village. She's a drinker and a gambler, but she knows what she's doing. I see. So who's the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? Naruto didn't say a word and didn't want to tell him, so he decided to change the subject. So, Kaji, how did you end up to be in Shido's group? Kaji wasn't expecting the blonde to change the subject, but thought that he heard quite a bit of him and decided to tell him his side. Well, I was in the school with a couple of other students. Flashback. Kaji was still in his classroom gathering his books after he heard the screaming from the guy that was using the microphone. The other students didn't waste time after they heard it and all made a run for it. Kaji. A student called out. Kaji gathered the rest of his books and turned to the source of the voice to see his friend Shin. Not going to describe him since he's only going to be seen in this scene with some other student. I'm coming, he said, as he rushed to them. The three of them were the last ones out of the classroom and stopped outside the doorway to figure out which way everyone went. They glanced right then left, but then they heard groaning sounds coming from their right. Glancing to their right, they saw a group of people coming towards them. They were pretty pale looking and they had blood covering throughout their body. What the hell? Shin asked. Why's there blood all over them? The other student asked. I don't know, Shin answered, as he faced the group. Hey, are you all right? No answer came from the group. But all they did was just groan and reach out when they got closer. Hey, what's? The person ahead of the group grabbed Shin's arm and held it up, as it bit down on his arm. Shin screamed out in pain, while Kaji and the other student were shocked. The others came up to join the person and all grabbed a part of Shin, as they all munched on him. What the fuck? The student shouted, but one of them walked to him faster than usual and grabbed him by the head. It then bit down on his shoulder, which he then screamed out in pain. Kaji was panicking and decided to run the opposite way. He turned around the corner and quickly ran down the stairway. Once he was halfway down the stairs, he turned to run down the next flight, but he ended up slipping on the first step he took on them and tumbled down to the bottom. His books were all scattered around the floor, but they were close to him. He weakly gathered his books again and got up to one knee. A shoe was in his sight, which he then looked up to see Mr. Shido with Yuki, Taneuchi, Sonoda, Miura, Kawamoto, Yamada, and Kurokami. The teacher held out his hand, which Kaji took it and was helped back up to his feet. Come with us, Kaji. We're going to get out of here. Kaji bowed his head. Thank you, Mr. Shido. End of flashback. Naruto looked at Kaji. So he helped you up and that's what made you want to join him? Kaji looked at the blonde's eyes. Well, yeah. I had no one else to go with, so I thought that if I went with them that we would be fine. I see, Naruto replied, as he buried his hands into his pockets. Might I ask what's with your eyes? I've never seen anyone with those before. Naruto chuckled a bit and looked back outside. Perhaps another time I'll tell you. Kaji looked back outside for a second and then back at the blonde. So, who is the host of the Kyuubi? Naruto's body tensed, which Kaji then began to register it. His eyes slightly widened and turned his body around so that his whole front was facing the blonde. Why, you're the host? Naruto nodded. Yes. The blonde placed a hand on his stomach. The Kyuubi is sealed in me, but I haven't heard from him lately. Wow. How long have you had it sealed in you? Naruto looked up at the sky with his eyes half open. Ever since I was born. Kaji's eyes widened. What? Yeah. My dad was the Hokage back then and when he was helping my mom give birth to me. Now, back then, my mom was the host of the Kyuubi. So, they had to find a secret place to give birth. Why? Because, when you give birth, the seal that keeps the Kyuubi sealed weakens, which gives it the opportunity to break free. So, right when I came out, an intruder broke in and used me as a hostage. The intruder was Madara and he held me hostage just so he can have the chance to take the Kyuubi. My father didn't know what to do, but of course, he saved me and got us out of there. He took me home thinking that it would be safe there, but since he saved me, Madara took my mother and freed the Kyuubi. He managed to gain control of it and he teleported the Nine Tails and himself to my village. That night was when the Kyuubi attacked the village. But, later my father managed to stop Madara from controlling it, but that was when the Kyuubi was free on its own. The Kyuubi was just about to wipe the village completely, but my dad teleported it with him to a more open area. That was when he brought mom and me. He realized he couldn't stop the Kyuubi and both my mom and dad decided to sacrifice their lives by sealing it in me. Kaji couldn't think of anything to say since his savior lost both his parents in order to protect everyone else, and ever since they sealed the Kyuubi in me, as I grew up, people hated me. They called me a monster and anything else you can think of. Naruto continued. Why? You didn't do anything. Because I have the Kyuubi inside me. They say it's my fault my father and mother died. That's awful. But, if you were just a baby when all that happened, how did you find this out? A good teacher of mine. What was his name? Jiraiya. He was known as one of the legendary Sannin. What was he like? Naruto then looked at Kaji. How about we talk about the rest later? I think I've told you enough for now. Oh. Okay. I'm glad that I got to know you a bit better now. Kaji said, as he smiled. Naruto just kept looking at him and actually smiled back. Hey. Kaji and the blonde turned to see Takashi, Saya, and Seiko. Takashi was now wearing black jeans, black sneakers, a white short-sleeved shirt, and the same jacket he wore with his school uniform. Saya wore lime green shorts, turquoise tank top, and yellow low-cut sneakers. Seiko wore light gray khaki shorts that stopped just a bit over her knees, a dark purple sheer blouse, and her same black battle boots with heels. Everyone held onto their old outfit. You're all done? The blonde asked. Yeah, Takashi answered. Naruto looked back at Kaji. What we discussed stays between us. He said quietly, but apparently, not quiet enough. Kaji nodded, while the others had a questioning look on their faces. What did you talk about? Saya asked. Naruto started to walk back to their household. Don't worry about it. They all looked at him, while Takashi and Saya went up to Kaji. What did you two talk about? Saya asked. Seiko respected that the blonde didn't want to tell them and decided to go join him, while Takashi and Saya bugged Kaji about whatever it was they talked about. Just when she was about to talk to him, she saw that he came to a stop. She came to his side and looked at him. Why did you stop? She asked, as Takashi and the others stopped just a bit behind them. Naruto looked ahead at the road, but then his eyes scanned the buildings to the right. A large group of shady people, wearing clothing that covered pretty much their entire body except their eyes, came out from an alley. They all had some sort of blade, whether it be a dagger, machete, katana, you name it. The group consisted of about 20 of them, as they all came up to the blonde's group and surrounded them. They all looked around, except for Naruto since he was just staring at the person that stood in front of him. Well. Looks like we got a bunch of kids that are lost. The one in front of Naruto said. The blonde easily picked it up that this guy is the leader of them. Obviously it was a man due to the fact that his body looks well built and that he stood a bit taller than the blonde. Naruto, as usual, stood there with a bored look on his face. The leader of the large group tilted his head and examined the blonde. You look as if you're high and mighty. Naruto blinked once and continued to walk. I have no time for this. He said in a cool tone. One of the shady people went up to him and grabbed the blonde by his wrist, which Naruto broke the grip and placed his hand against the person's stomach. Shinra Tensai. He said quietly to where only the person could hear it and was instantly sent flying back. The entire group watched in shock as one of their own was sent soaring. But then they quickly glanced back at the blonde. What the hell was that? The leader shouted, as he looked the blonde in the eyes, and what's with those eyes? Seiko, Takashi, and Saya then remembered that the blonde has been with them for a couple days now and not once have they asked anything about them. What do you want? The blonde asked. Well, We were going to capture you and have you work for us, the leader pointed at the blonde, but how about you join us and leave these weak kids? Seiko and the others' eyes widened. You can't just make a proposal and take him from us. Saya shouted. Why not? He seems to be the reason why you're all alive. Plus, he deserves to be in a group to where everyone can fight. Not with a bunch of kids that can't do anything. The leader said. Takashi clenched his fists, but Naruto walked up to the leader to where they were just a foot apart. Tell you what. If your buddies here can manage to land a hit on me, then I'll join you. The leader grinned behind his mask. All right everyone, you heard him. Seiko and the others backed away to where they were now standing outside the circle. Naruto was now the only one that's completely surrounded by the shady group of people. Every single one of them charged at the blonde. The first two both attempted to stab him, but he easily caught their wrists and slammed them together. Another set of two came in, but they both wielded swords. They both started to swing at him, but he swiftly and easily dodged them all. I said if you could hit me, but it looks like you're trying to kill me. The blonde mentioned, as he held out his right arm, while a metal rod formed in his hand. He quickly blocked one of the incoming strikes with his rod and kicked the other person hard on his chest. If you want to try and kill me, then I'll just kill every single one of you. Naruto broke his own block and attempted to stab the other one. Stop. The blonde stopped, which his weapon was just a mere inch from stabbing the person's chest. The man he was about to kill was standing straight up with his sword held back and his eyes showed fear since he was just about to be killed. Enough. I don't want anyone getting killed. The leader said, as the group all backed away from the blonde. What's wrong? That didn't last long at all. Naruto mentioned. The leader chuckled. What's your name, kid? The blonde grinned. Naruto Namikaze. All right, Naruto Namikaze. We'll meet again some other time. The leader said, as he grabbed a ball from his pocket and threw it down on the ground, which made a huge smoke screen. A few seconds later, the smoke died down to show that they were all gone. Seiko and the others came up to him. Were you really going to join them if they actually managed to lay a hit on you? Saya asked. Naruto kept his stare to where the leader once was and then decided to continue the path home. No. Time. 7:28 p.m. Everyone was enjoying their relaxing night. Shizuka was actually washing everyone's clothes that they wore before their new outfits. Alice was playing around with little Zeke by chasing him throughout the household. Kota, Takashi, Rei, and pretty much everyone else except for one person, were sitting in the living room chatting with each other. Naruto was standing out on the balcony only wearing the jeans he picked out from the store and his sandals. Shizuka was washing his upper clothing since she claimed they were filthy. The blonde actually saw in fact that they weren't messy at all, which is why he got the impression that she just wanted him to walk around shirtless. Before he came out to the balcony, he could feel everyone's attention was on him. When he came out here, he could hear them talking about him and how he was well built. He leaned forward against the railing and looked out at all the buildings. His body began to heat up, as he was starting to feel a bit light. Damn it. Why's this happening now? He thought to himself. He stood back up and placed a hand on his forehead. His hand instantly got warmer than usual after feeling how warm his head was. His forehead began to sweat and he could feel himself getting hotter. Turning around, he looked inside to see everyone still talking to each other. He slowly made his way back inside, which caught everyone's attention. Are you okay? Takashi asked. Naruto slowly took a couple steps forward and came to a stop. Why yeah. Albeit, his eyes closed, as he fell to the ground. Naruto-san. They all shouted and rushed to him. Takashi and Seiko flipped him onto his back. The blonde's mouth was partly open and his breathing was going at a quick pace. Seiko placed her hand on his forehead. He's burning up. Quick. Go get a cold wet rag. Takashi called out. Yuki was the fast one to respond to the statement and ran to the kitchen. Naruto's eyes opened and he found himself sitting in a sewage-looking place. A deep laugh echoed through the area, which he then easily picked up of who it was. He got up to his feet and began to walk forward, until he came upon a cage. I've begun to wonder where you've been at. Naruto said. Naruto. 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 The blonde cocked an eyebrow. Why have you been so quiet this whole time? Why haven't you paid me a visit? I'm sure if you came, you would have seen me awake. Naruto clenched his fist. TCK. I've been sealed in you ever since you were born, and now that we're in a different world, you haven't paid me one visit. I'm hurt, Naruto boy. Shut up. The fox tilted its head to the side a bit and a mischievous grin crept on its face. Oh. Is little Naruto getting mad? The blonde gritted his teeth and clenched his fist so hard that the palm of his hands began to bleed. The fox's grin widened, seeing the blood sliding dripping down from his fists. What's the matter? Am I really getting on your nerves? I bet you won't undo this seal and go for round 2 now that Kushina's gone. Shut up. The fox raised its head, as its eyes looked down. You're still easy to anger. Why would you tell that boy you saved about your life? You don't know these weaklings. Nothing came from the blonde, but his anger was boiling. You know, Naruto boy. We both don't know how we ended up here, but if we're going to be staying in this world, you mustn't get close to these people. Naruto's anger began to slowly die down, hearing that the fox had said something that he already knew from the start. I know. I just what? Want to protect them. Make new friends. You need to leave these people. They're nothing to worry about. You need to worry about how to get back to our world. Naruto's eyes narrowed. I know, and believe me, I want to get back to our world too. The fox lied down and rested its head on its 2 front legs, glad to see that we're on the same page here. You wouldn't happen to know why these flashbacks I'm getting hurt, would you? I'm afraid I don't. But you need to somehow maintain them from interrupting your battles. If you get another memory coming back to you and it leaves you open, whoever it may be you're going up against won't hesitate and kill you when they see the chance. Thanks for the advice, Naruto replied, as his gaze avoided from looking at the fox. Another thing, why the hell are you trying to act all cool around these insects? You're usually all sheepish and happy back in our world. Naruto crinkled his nose and pointed at the fox. Shut up. The fox began to laugh once again. Are you trying to impress these insects by your attitude? You know you could still be acting like your normal self since they're impressed by your skills. Naruto's anger began to start up again. They're not insects. The fox lifted its head up once again and glared at the blonde. Think about it. They're just normal people that can't do anything. As I said, they're insects. They're normal people. Shut up, kid. You shouldn't care about them anyway. We don't know them, and they don't know us. And as soon as we get back to our world, you'll completely forget about them. Naruto's eyes narrowed again. No. The fox growled in annoyance. Fine. If you won't leave them, then I'll make you myself one day. Just remember that, when you start getting too close to them, then I'm taking control. I've already told you. I'm not going to get close to them. Like hell you're not. Look at you. You've told a lot about yourself to that boy you saved and that purple-haired girl. That shows me that you're getting close to them. Why do you even care if I get close to them or not? Because your emotions will get the better of you to where you'll sacrifice your life for one of them. Naruto didn't say anything in response since the fox was right. If it did come down to where he got close to everyone and they were in danger, he knew that he would sacrifice himself to save them so that they could live on. The fox sighed. You see. You know I'm right, so you need to leave these worms and find a way to get us home. I know, now hurry up and do something about this fever. The fox chuckled. Calm your horses, boy. I'm on it. Takashi, Seiko, Kaji, and Shizuka were standing around the bed that they had placed the blonde in. He lied there with a cold wet rag sitting on his forehead. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But his fever is way too high. He just needs to rest. Shizuka mentioned. How did this start? Takashi asked. I don't know. He looked to be just fine when he was up. Shizuka answered. He did. But why did it come all of a sudden? Kaji wondered. Why don't we leave so he can rest and discuss this outside? Shizuka asked, as she walked out of the room, followed by the others. The door closed, which the blonde's eyes opened in an instant. He leaned up to see he was the only one in the room. A sigh escaped his lips. The fox is right. Kid, change in plans. You can stay with these worms for now, but don't get close like I said. I'm going to be watching you still and trying to figure out ways to get back home. Got it? Yeah, good, but if you think of anything having to do with returning home, speak up. The blonde looked out the window to see that it was dark out. I will. One more thing. I've seen you fight those things and it's making me wanting to see you kill more and more of them. Why don't you go out and slay some more? Will it shut you up? Possibly. Naruto threw the sheets off of him and got out of bed. Thunder roared outside, which drew the blonde's attention to the window again. Droplets of rain began to pour down, while the blonde looked down to see that he's still shirtless. He shrugged and held out his left arm, which then his sword appeared in his hand. Holding the sword out in front of him, he stared at it. How about you let me take control and slay them myself? I want to give it a shot. Damn it, Kurama. I promise, once I'm done, you won't hear another word from me for the rest of the night. I just want to bathe in blood. Naruto's grip on the handle of his sword tightened. Fine. The blonde's eyes closed and opened after a second to reveal his now reddened eyes. His pupil was slit, while the rings in his eyes still remained to show his dojutsu. His hair stuck out more and the whisker marks on his cheeks darkened. His fangs grew, while his other teeth sharpened. The now possessed Naruto quietly laughed and walked to the window. I'm going to take the window so that we won't have to go past those worms to get out. Naruto found himself in the sewage place again and just sat in front of the cage. That's fine. The fox opened the window and jumped out and landed on the street, going to be using Fox or Kurama since he's in control of Naruto's body for the time being. The landing caused him to land in a crouching position, but he slowly got back to standing straight up. His arms were resting on his sides, while the sword in his left hand was pointing downward and being dragged, as he walked up to the giant wall of dead. The rain began to pick up, as it poured down on him, which caused some of his hair to go down. The fox looked up at the wall and grinned. As bad as I want to destroy this wall and have those things overrun this joint, I'll respect the fact that you're also sheltering here. So, whenever you do leave, we'll destroy this wall so that they can die here. Naruto had his eyes closed and still sat in front of the cage, but didn't say anything. The fox looked up at the dark clouds above, as red chakra formed below his feet. The red chakra shot up, which caused him to rise up as well. A grin came to the fox's face, while the chakra stopped at the top of the wall. He took a step and now stood on top of the wall. Looking down at the other end, he jumped down and once again landed in a crouching position. He got back to standing up straight again and began his path, out to seek for them. The spot he landed on ended up to form a small crater. Kurama began to laugh deeply. Tonight, I'll show you a true disaster. Time, 8:34 p.m. Everyone was back in the living room and chatting about whatever they could think of. Earlier, Shizuka managed to finish washing the clothes, so she placed them in the dryer. Alice was still running around playing with Zeke. The others, just as I said, were sitting in the living room. However, Rei and Saya were starting to get sleepy. Rei was sitting next to Takashi and rested her head on his shoulder. Saya got up, decided to call it a night and went to her room that she shared with Rei and Shizuka. Kota of course was fidgeting with the guns. Kaji was lying on the floor once again, while Yuki was sitting with Seiko and kept talking about Naruto. Seiko could see that she was like a fangirl of his. I think I'll go check on him, the purple-haired beauty said, as she got up from the couch. Wait, I'm coming too, Yuki said, as she quickly caught up to Seiko. It didn't take long, as the two came up to the door that Naruto was resting in. Seiko opened the door in that instant. They both saw that he was gone. They rushed in. He's gone, Yuki stated. Seiko looked around, but then felt a breeze. She looked at the window to see that it was open. He left. Come on, we need to tell the others, the purple teen said. Yuki closed the window and ran out the room to catch up with Seiko. Seiko came back into the living room and stopped in the hall just outside of it. Naruto's gone, she stated. Everyone turned to look at her in an instant. What? Takashi nearly shouted. Yuki came up next to Seiko and saw that she had already told them since they were all looking at her. We went to go check on him and he wasn't there. The window was open though, which means that he obviously left, Yuki said. Why? It's storming out and it's going to be harder for him to see, Kaji mentioned. I don't know, but I'm going to go look for him, Seiko mentioned, as she grabbed her wooden sword that was leaning against the wall and ran to the door. Takashi and Rei got up to and grabbed their weapon that was leaning against the same wall that Seiko's weapon was. Kaji hopped up to his feet and also ran for the door, but before he was out of sight from the others, he turned to look at Yuki. Stay here with the others. Tell Ms. Marikawa where we went if she asks, he said. Kaji, wait. The teen looked at Kota and saw him coming up to him with a gun. Here. Take this. Kota said, as he handed Kaji the Desert Eagle with a couple of clips. Oh, also, Kota quickly ran back to the guns and grabbed the Ithaca Riot shotgun, along with a little box containing ammo. He came back to Kaji and handed them to him. Give this to Takashi. Kaji placed the Desert Eagle in his pocket, along with the clips, and took the rest. Thanks, he said, and ran outside. Kaji ran out the gate and saw that the others were standing in front of the wall. Hey Takashi, here, Kaji called out. Takashi turned to Kaji and saw that he was carrying firearms. Kaji handed him the shotgun and the box of ammo. Thanks. Kaji looked up at the wall. How are we going to get past this? Takashi looked around and then he saw that this wall was lined up right in the middle of two gates. We can climb those gates and get around it. Here's a picture of what it looks like, sort of, with the dotted lines resembling the wall and the L resembling the gates. LL. Let's go then, Seiko said. Bah ha 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 ha. Kurama laughed evilly, as he sliced a walker in half. The fox ended up deep within the city. Two giant ones came after him like a couple of bulls. Kurama glanced at them and grinned, as he slammed his hand on the street. Below the giants, a giant red chakra hand came from the ground and grabbed them both. Kurama held out the same hand he slammed on the street and clenched it into a fist, as the chakra one did too, which the two giants were now smashed up into bits and pieces. Kurama's smile widened to show that Naruto's teeth were now sharp ones, and looked around to see hundreds of more walkers coming after him. Red chakra formed around his arms, as he swung his arms around, which the red chakra extended and took on an arm. The chakra arms bashed against several of them and the fists pounded down on a few of them. Even though we're in this world, I can still enjoy crushing something. Kurama shouted and withdrew the chakra arms back into him. He crouched down and jumped high up into the air. Looking down at the massive horde, he grinned and pointed the palm of his right hand down at them. You will all give me the joy of blowing every single one of you to pieces. A reddish and purplish colored ball of chakra formed in his palm and slowly grew to the size of an Odama Rasengan. Suffer, the fox said, and fired the ball of chakra down at the horde. Once it hit down on them, a massive explosion completely covered a 100-yard radius and expanded 100 feet in the air. Once the explosion died down, Kurama lowered himself back down on the street and looked around to see body parts all over the place. The street now had a red color to it instead of black. He knew that the rain would wash it out, but he enjoyed the scene before him. Groaning sounds echoed the streets, as a grin came upon his face again, more and more. Ha 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 ha. Kurama laughed and with immense speed, ran to the sound. In just a split second, he found himself standing at an entrance that led to a parking lot, which was completely covered with walkers. Kurama laughed insanely and charged into the horde with the sword tightly in his grip. Takashi and the others came upon the clothing store that they had picked their new outfits from. However, the explosion earlier caught their attention and completely left them blank. What was that? Ray asked. Takashi was way lost. I have no clue. Kaji knew exactly who it was. That's Naruto all right. But what the hell was that he just did? Seiko usually wasn't the type to show that she was scared, but after seeing something like that, she was starting to get that feeling. We need to go toward that explosion, Kaji mentioned. The others looked at him with, are you crazy? Look, are you kidding? Did you not see that? Ray asked. I did see it, but I'm not kidding. That explosion is Naruto's doing. Naruto. How the hell can he do that? Takashi asked. Kaji's eyes narrowed and promised Naruto that he wouldn't tell anyone, but he knew that they wouldn't go toward it without knowing what caused it. Not to mention, they wouldn't go without hearing an explanation from him. How he knows? Listen, I'm sure Naruto will tell you everything if we just go get him. Takashi and Seiko then remembered that when they were at the clothing store that him and Naruto had a chat about something. Fair enough. I'm going to confront him one last time, Takashi said. Ha 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 ha. Kurama laughed, as he decapitated one of them and then shot a chakra blast at a group of them. This is what I needed. I will kill anything in my sight. Mall rooftop. A small woman with short, light brown hair and blue eyes looked down at the parking lot to see the massacre going on down below. The front of her hair is pushed to the right side of her face, partially obscuring her right eye. She wears a female police uniform of the Tokanasu Higashi Police Station, which consists of a white shirt, a black tie, a blue jacket, and a blue skirt. She also wears a green band around her left arm with 2 white stripes on it and gold earrings in the shape of stars. What's going on down there? She asked herself. Asami. The girl turned around to see a man wearing a black torque, white shirt, work boots, and a black jacket with black pants. What's wrong, Shimada? What the hell's going on? Shimada asked, as he came next to her and looked down below, along with Asami. I have no clue. I've never seen anything like this before. A man with short, light hair, wearing glasses, and earrings came up next to Shimada. He also has a goatee and some other light facial hair. He wears a large, unzipped jacket over his shirt, tan cargo pants, work boots, and fingerless gloves. He also wears a pair of headphones around his neck and a necklace with a skull on it. What's going on down there? Shimada looked to his left. Ah, Hiro. We have no idea. Asami looked at Hiro. Where's Matsushima? A woman with short black hair and light blue eyes came next to Asami, right here. She said, as she looked down at the scene below. Matsushima wore the exact same outfit that Asami wore. Ah, do you know what's going on down there? Asami asked. No, I just know that it's someone that isn't normal. Matsushima answered. The 4 of them all looked back down and saw a blur of red. Is that the person? Hiro asked. The red blur expanded and engulfed the walkers around it. It has to be. Shimada said. Kurama cleared the blur and looked around to see all the walkers scattered all over the lot. Ha ha ha. This is too easy. The ground Kurama stood on began to shake a bit. He looked down at it and then toward the way he came from to see several of the giants charging at him. A grin crept upon Kurama's face. You can't do a thing to me. Kurama held out his arm and had his right palm facing the incoming giants. Another ball of chakra formed in his palm and grew. The giants were now about 50 yards from the possessed blonde, while Kurama smirked and fired the ball of chakra. It caused another massive explosion when it made impact with the giant up front. Kurama stood there with a grin on his face, but the ground below him began to crack open, which he looked down to see an arm coming out to grab him. He easily jumped aside to avoid it, but saw the ground opening to see more of those giants coming out. So you can come from the ground too. It's like you're coming from hell. Kurama charged at them with the sword tightly in his grip. He flipped the sword to where he was holding the sword backwards, as red chakra formed around the sword. Jumping in the air a bit, he dashed down at them and sliced his sword once, as he then appeared behind them. His eyes closed, as he stood up straight with the same grin on his face. The giants coming from the ground all came to a stop, while their bodies split in half. Kurama turned to look at all the corpses lying around and started laughing. What the hell? Shimada stated. I don't know what it is, but to me, it looks like some sort of demon from hell. But whatever it is, it took care of those things like it was nothing. Hiro mentioned. Everyone couldn't quite get a good look, but then Asami quickly ran back to the door that led to the stairs. The others turned to see her leaving. Where are you going? They all asked. I'm going to go get a telescope so we can get a better look. She answered, as she opened the door and rushed off to find the device. Okay Kurama, I think you've had enough. Naruto called out. Not a chance. The night's still early and did you not notice? Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Notice what? The people on the roof up there. They've been watching us and I can't have people seeing you like this. So I have to kill them. Naruto quickly got up to his feet, which made a minor splash from his movement. No. We're not going to kill anyone except for those creatures. Fine, fine. Oh, how about you let me seek out those people that were pretty shady and kill them? Not yet. I actually want to find out more about them first. TCK. Fine. I'm going to continue slaughtering these weaklings. Reality. Kurama looked around and saw that the rain was washing up the blood. A sigh escaped his lips. Groaning sounds started to close in, which Kurama quickly glanced to his left and saw another horde of them coming from a different path. A grin once again crept upon his face. More. He gripped the sword tightly and added his chakra to it again. More. The chakra around the sword darkened into a crimson color. More. Asami came back outside with the telescope she had mentioned and joined back with the others. I got it. She said, as she extended it. Hurry. What do you see? Matsushima asked. Asami looked through the little lens and scanned the area looking for the figure. It was dark and since the red blur faded, it was making it harder for her to find it. However, that blur formed again and she locked it down and saw that there was someone within it. It's a person that's doing this. Hiro and the others looked at her with a shocked expression. You're kidding. What kind of human can do that? Hiro asked. You know, since these people have been rising from the dead and feasting on the living, this world hasn't been normal since this started. So, this person must be someone sent from hell. It's impossible to be a normal human to do such a thing. Shimada mentioned. Everyone looked back down. Now that I think about it, you could be right. Hiro replied. Wait a second. Everyone turned to face Matsushima. If someone's sent from hell, wouldn't it be helping them? Shimada was quiet now since that it should seem that way, but it wasn't. You're right. Wouldn't Satan want whomever he sends to help destroy the world? Then why would that thing down there be demolishing the walkers? Hiro asked. That question left them in a puzzle situation, so they went back to watching the scene below. Takashi and the others finally approached the scene where the explosion occurred and saw corpses all over the place. Yeah. This is defiantly Naruto's doing. Kaji stated. Where could he have gone? Takashi asked. A beam of red light shot up at the darkened clouds, which drew their attention. He's near the mall. Ray mentioned. Let's go. Ha ha ha. Kurama was going crazy, as he decapitated several of them with one swing. Kurama's mood changed from having fun slaughtering these creatures to boredom. This isn't even a challenge. Maybe I should just crush this entire world. Okay Kurama, you've had enough. Shut up kid. I'm going to continue slaughtering them. You're just about to lose it. I was just playing around kid. If I were to destroy this world, I would be off task of how to find a way home. Naruto was starting to get annoyed of how the fox was taking too much time in demolishing the walkers and wanted to get back home so he could rest. Reality. Hey you. Kurama looked at the mall's entrance and saw some man standing there with a gun in his hand. Put your hands in the air demon. Kurama and Naruto's ears perked up at hearing a familiar word, demon. Ha 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 ha. The man began to shake in fear just by hearing the deep demon voice. What do you plan on doing with that puny weapon? Do you honestly think? The man pulled the trigger. As the bullet closed in on Kurama, the red chakra melted it. What? Pathetic. Kurama slowly walked towards him. Stay away. He shouted and fired more shots at the demon. However, like before, all the bullets melted when they were in reach of the red chakra. Kurama stopped his path since the man was now looking at something behind him. He turned around and saw a small building being smashed. His eye locked on another giant, but this giant wasn't like the ones he's been fighting. This one was enormous, standing at 2 stories tall, and the muscles were massively huge that it was just heinous. Kurama's grin formed back on his face. Now that's going to be a challenge. He shouted and charged at the freakishly large giant. The giant slowly walked toward the mall and saw a red blur coming toward it. Kurama jumped up to where he was face to face with the giant. Just as he was about to cut down on it, the giant quickly backhanded him, which sent him flying back to the lot. The man that had shot at Kurama ended up going back inside and re-barricading the doors. Kurama wiped the blood leaking from his mouth and looked at the incoming giant. That was rather rough. Kurama grinned and held out his hand, as a red Rasengan formed in his hand. His grin widened and threw the ball of chakra right at it. In a blink of an eye, the ball of energy hit the giant, but it didn't turn out quite like the fox imagined. The giant was only forced to take a couple steps back. What? Fine, I'll just crush you then. Kurama shouted, as he slammed his hands on the ground. Where the giant currently is, 2 large red chakra hands came out from below the ground it stood on and reached up toward it. The freakishly large giant walker looked down, but the chakra hands made their way up to the giant's head and grabbed it by both sides of it. The giant's arms slowly came up, but then it came to a stop, as the chakra hands squeezed hard on the head. In a matter of seconds, the giant's head was completely smashed, as blood came pouring down. Kurama's chakra arms vanished. Too easy. Asami and the others couldn't believe their very eyes. First, they saw a massive walker that they didn't think was possible for it to become so huge. Now, they saw this so-called demon completely smash it. I can't believe it. Hiro announced. Can't believe what? The giant, or the demon smashing the giant? Shimada asked. Both. Hiro answered. Asami stared at the demon far below them, but then her eyes locked onto a group of people approaching the lot. Look. She shouted. Matsushima and the others looked around the area and then they all saw what she was calling out, survivors. No, they need to get away from that demon. Hiro shouted and ran for the door. Asami and the others turned to see Hiro out of their sights. Hiro. They all shouted and ran for the door. What the hell is that? Takashi asked, as they approached the mall parking lot. Kaji and the others looked at the red glow and saw someone within it. I don't know. Ray answered. However, the red glow turned to them, which shocked them all. Seiko narrowed her eyes and examined closer. She recognized that it was standing on two legs and that it has blonde hair. The clothing was torn up a bit, black sandals, whisker marks, which Seiko's body jumped a bit finding out who it was. It's Naruto. Ray and Takashi looked at Seiko with shocked expressions. Kaji knew already and was shocked himself to see this look. You. Kurama shouted and walked toward them. What the hell? That didn't sound like Naruto. Ray mentioned. Yeah, it sounds more demonic. Takashi said. The red chakra around Naruto faded, while Seiko looked at his eyes to see that they were red now. Takashi and Ray were once again shocked to see that it is Naruto, you worms. Kurama shouted. Naruto. Kaji questioned. Kurama glared at Kaji. No. I'm not Naruto, you pathetic weakling. Huh. Takashi and Ray both questioned. Naruto, what's wrong with you? Seiko asked, as she took a step forward. Kurama then glared at the purple-haired beauty. Are you humans this stupid? I've told you that I'm not Naruto. Then who are you? Ray asked. Kurama smiled. He's the Kyuubi that's sealed in Naruto. They all looked at Kaji to see that he had answered for the possessed Naruto, which made Kurama's smile widen. Clever. You actually remembered. Kyuubi. Takashi and the others questioned. I'm sure Naruto will explain. Kaji answered. Ha ha ha. You're all pathetic. You all rely on Naruto to protect you weaklings. You just use him to be your guard. Just like those weaklings back at home used him as a weapon. We're not using him. He's what? Your ultimate weapon. Stop acting like you care about him. I've been watching you all and as Naruto here tries becoming your friends, I see you all wondering why is it he tries. He's just a monster on your planet, so why not act as if we like him and use him? I see that's how you all think, so stop the acting. Kurama shouted, which cut Ray off earlier. Kurama pointed at Ray. You're just a stupid little girl. Your whining drives me nuts. Kurama then pointed at Takashi. You're a little prick that likes to go against things that Naruto does at times. For instance, how you went against him when he kicked that other pathetic group of humans out. He then pointed at Kaji. You're a suck-up. Just because Naruto saved you doesn't mean you can act as if you're in debt to him. Last but not least, he pointed at Seiko, and you. Quit trying to move on to him. He doesn't need a girl to act like she's interested in him when she's not and just wants to use him. I'm tired of all of you acting like he's your friend. What is he to you? A smile formed on all their faces. He's our friend. Seiko answered. Yeah, sure there were times we didn't get along, but there was still times that we goofed around and had a good time. Takashi also answered. Kurama's eyes widened. You're all liars. Which is why, Kurama held out his right hand, as a giant red Rasengan formed in it. I will dispose of you all. Seiko and the others' eyes widened and were shocked from Kurama's outrage and couldn't find themselves to move. Kurama aimed for the group, but came to a halt. His eyes shut, as the ball of chakra vanished from his hand. Kurama placed his hands on his head. Damn it. Why don't you understand that I'm trying to help you? Kurama yelled and took a couple steps back. No, we agreed that you could just kill those creatures. I'm not going to let you kill these people. You don't understand. I don't want them using you. I'm tired of seeing my host suffering. I'm not suffering. I know what I'm doing. No. Red chakra formed on the ground around Naruto and shot up in the air, as it spun around him like a spiral. Stop it. Seiko and the others stepped back a bit, as the red chakra came down and engulfed the blonde. The red chakra then vanished to reveal Naruto standing there back in his normal form. Naruto? Kaji asked. The blonde stood there with his usual bored expression and scratched the back of his head. Sorry about that. Seiko and the others all smiled and rushed to him, which caused the blonde to cock an eyebrow. Don't go off like that again. They said. Naruto leaned back since they all got up close to him, but then he realized how worried they were and actually smiled. I won't. They all were relieved to see the same Naruto coming back to them, which Ray hugged him tightly. Takashi felt a little hunch of jealousy hit him, but he couldn't find himself to get mad at the blonde. Kaji placed his hand on the blonde's shoulder and chuckled, "Glad to have you back." Naruto looked at Kaji, but then he felt another hand on his other shoulder. He turned to see Takashi with a smile on his face. Naruto's smile extended a bit, "Thanks." Ray backed off, which Takashi and Kaji saw why and also backed off. Naruto looked in front of him to see Seiko coming up to him. He saw a small smile on her face. "You had us worried, Naruto-san." The blonde scratched the back of his head and chuckled, "Sorry." "That won't." His eyes then widened to see that she wrapped her arms around him. "Never leave your friends like that again," she said. Naruto was still a bit shocked, but then he smiled once again and wrapped his arms around her too. "I won't." Takashi and the others stood there with a smile on their face and were glad to have their friend back. Seiko unwrapped her arms, which gave the sign to Naruto to unwrap his too. The purple-haired beauty just smiled at him, as did the blonde. Takashi then remembered what he was going to ask, "Hey Naruto." Seiko and Naruto looked at the teen. "Yeah. What was that just now, by the way?" Naruto closed his eyes and chuckled, "I'll explain on the way home." Takashi smiled since he's finally going to be able to hear the story and turned around deciding to leave once again. Ray, Kaji, and Seiko were close behind him. "Okay. I mean, I've seen you use some weird tricks, but what we just saw was..." A gunshot echoed through the area and they all realized that it wasn't far from them at all. Instead, it sounded as if it was real close. Thunder boomed from above, as the group turned around to see Naruto standing there with wide eyes, but then the blonde fell forward and the others saw that he was shot in the back. "Naruto." Time: 11:28 p.m. "Why did you shoot him?" Takashi shouted. Hiro jumped back a bit from the sudden outburst. "I thought he was going to kill you if I didn't shoot him." Takashi and his group, while Hiro, along with Shimada, were sitting in a lobby. Asami and Matsushima were tending to the unconscious blonde. Flashback. "Naruto." They all shouted. "Stay away from him," Hiro shouted, as he and his group approached the unconscious blonde. However, Takashi and the others didn't listen. "What the hell was that for?" Ray asked. Thunder cracked above once again. "I said stay away. He's a demon," Hiro shouted, as he approached the unconscious demon and pointed his gun at Naruto's forehead. Kaji pulled out the Desert Eagle and pointed it at Hiro, while Takashi pointed his shotgun at him as well. "What are you doing? I saved you all and you're pointing your guns at me." Hiro. The group all looked back. Asami. Matsushima. Shimada. "Help me get them away from this demon," Hiro said. "He's not a demon," Ray shouted. Hiro glanced back at the group. "He is. You weren't here when he used his powers to completely wipe the floor with them. Because he's not from this world. But it doesn't mean he's a demon," Kaji yelled. Matsushima saw the purple-haired girl trying to lift the blonde up by putting his right arm around her shoulders. She quickly rushed over to her and helped her by putting his left arm around her shoulders. "Let's get him inside." Seiko looked at her and smiled. "Thank you." Hiro looked at Matsushima and saw her helping the girl taking the so-called demon to the mall. "What the hell are you doing?" Ray, Asami, Shimada, and Kaji followed them, while Takashi clenched his fists. "Why are you taking that demon inside? He's going to kill." "Shut up." Hiro turned around, but then received a deadly punch right to his face. Takashi then ran after the others, leaving Hiro behind. Hiro dropped the gun and placed his hands on his face. "You bitch." Groaning sounds came from afar, which Hiro removed his hands and saw that there were more of them coming. "Shit." He grabbed the gun and ran back inside. End of flashback. "You're an idiot. Naruto's from a different world and he can use some sort of power. He wasn't going to kill us because he's our friend," Takashi said. "See, he's not from this world and he uses some sort of power. He was sent from hell. Meaning that he is a demon." Hiro barked back. "He's not." Everyone turned to Kaji. "I know where he's from and I'm sure once he wakes up, he'll explain everything." Kaji's right. Everyone then turned to look at Seiko this time. "Naruto-san isn't a demon. He's just as much as a human like any of us." "No, he's not. In fact," Hiro got up from his seat and turned his back to everyone, "I'm going to finish off that demon." Seiko and the rest of her group instantly got up and quickly came in front of Hiro to prevent him from going on. No, you're not. Kaji said. Hiro growled in frustration and then pointed his gun at Kaji's head. Move. Takashi pointed his shotgun at Hiro's chest. You're not going to kill anyone. Hiro was starting to get frustrated to where his arms were shaking. You damn kids don't. The doors that led to the room where Naruto was being taken care of slammed open, which drew everyone's attention to see Naruto storming out of there. Wait. You should be resting. Matsushima shouted from the room. Hiro's eyes widened seeing that the demon he calls right back on his feet in such a small amount of time. Hiro pushed past the group of survivors and pointed his gun at Naruto. Stop. The blonde stopped in his path, while Takashi and the others looked at Hiro. What the hell are you doing? Takashi asked. Shimada sighed, as he remained in his seat the whole time and watched the scene before him. Hiro's losing it again. I'm going to kill this demon. Hiro shouted. Naruto continued and walked towards Hiro. I'm getting tired of hearing you call me a demon. Hiro took a step back, as his emotion went from being angry to being scared. Stop. The blonde didn't listen this time and suddenly appeared right in front of Hiro. Just before Hiro pulled the trigger, Naruto quickly swiped the gun out of his hand and now pressed it against his forehead. I've never used one of these, but I'm sure if I'm this close, I won't miss. All eyes were on Naruto this time. Wait, Naruto. Don't do it, Kaji said. Naruto stood there glaring at the frightened Kaji, while everyone else was looking at the blonde. How did you recover so fast? Kaji asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I had a discussion with someone. Flashback. Naruto was lying on a table in a first aid center he was brought to after being shot. Luckily the shot didn't kill him, but it did manage to knock him out. Mindscape. Foolish. Your body couldn't handle a shot from that. You stupid fox. You used my body and wore me out. Of course I'm going to go out like that. Kurama chuckled. I'll tell you what. I'll heal you now, if you give me another night of slaughtering those creatures. If you can actually listen, then yes. Just heal me already. Kurama began to laugh. I'm on it. End of flashback. Naruto shook his head from the memory and pointed the gun at Hiro's left thigh. I'll let you live. He pulled the trigger, which in an instant, Hiro fell onto his right knee and nearly screamed in pain. Hiro. Shimada and the rest of his group called out, as they rushed to him. Naruto dropped the gun and looked down at Hiro. Next time I see you and if you're still like this, I'll kill you. Takashi and his group just kept watching Naruto, but the blonde came up to them. Come on. I was hoping you all wouldn't see me like that earlier, but I'll explain it on the way home. The blonde looked back at the other group. I have a feeling that we'll see each other again sometime. Break. Naruto and the others were back outside in the parking lot of the mall. Their time spent in the mall managed to have more walkers show up. It wasn't much, but it was like a small group of them with an estimate of 20. Also, with their time spent in the aid center, the storm managed to move off. After Kurama's massacre, all you could see were corpses, body parts, blood puddles scattered the lot, and holes in the ground due to Kurama's chakra arms coming from below. You could say that, it was a complete disaster. Seiko hacked her wooden sword against one of the walkers' head. There's not much of them left. Takashi and Kaji both shot a couple of them in the chest a few times. The group of walkers quickly reduced to half. Naruto stood up in front and summoned his sword into his hand. In a quick flash, he appeared on the other side of them. The remaining walkers dropped after their heads fell first. Seiko and the others walked over to the blonde. You know, I'm used to seeing you easily take them out like this. I've seen you do it so many times that it just doesn't surprise me anymore. Takashi mentioned. Naruto turned around to face them and chuckled. I knew you all would get used to seeing this. Takashi then figured that this time would be the time to start getting some answers. So, Naruto. What was that earlier? You were completely different back there. Naruto's eyes narrowed and formed a straight face. Well, Kaji is aware of this and what you saw was the work of what's sealed inside me. Sealed inside you? Seiko asked. I'll try to keep this short. Inside me is a biju named Kurama. A biju is a certain tailed beast. There are a total of 9 of them and each of them has a certain amount of tails depending on their number. For instance, the one-tailed biju has 1 tail. The one I have is the strongest of them all, the Kyubi, which is the 9-tailed fox. Seiko tilted her head slightly. Is that why you have those whisker marks? No. I was born with them. Anyway, back in my world, there's a man after the Biju inside me. His name's Madara Uchiha. He has managed to capture 7 Bijus, but now he's after a teacher of mine that has the 8 tails inside him and myself. He plans on summoning the 10 tails once he retrieves all 9 of them and use it to have the world in his hands. The last thing I remember doing in my world before I somehow arrived here was that I was fighting him on my own. We clashed a special move of ours with each other and that's all I remember. I went unconscious and woke up in some alley. You ended up in this world. From some sort of collision. Ray asked. Yeah, we both used a powerful move of ours and since we collided, it must have been too much. That must have been something then. Kaji mentioned. What about those eyes? I've never seen eyes like those before. Takashi asked. Well, these eyes give me a special power, which is only for people a part of a clan that I'm in. You have to have the blood of an Uzumaki. Oh. Naruto nodded. Anyway, can you 4 make it back home without me? What? Why? Ray asked. When I had Kurama have his little fun, there was this monster that was 2 stories tall. I'm going to investigate around and find out how it ended up like that. I saw where it came from, so I'm going to go to where it once was. A 2-story tall walker. It truly is no longer our normal world. Takashi said. I don't want anyone coming along, because I'm afraid that I might not be there to protect you and I don't want anyone getting hurt. Takashi sighed. I understand. The team then looked at the others. Are you all ready to head back? They all nodded and wished the best of luck to the blonde, as they walked past him to head home. Naruto sighed, as he performed a few hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground, which a pouch and a sheath appeared. He grabbed the pouch and opened the flap to see that it was full of his kunais and shurikens. Good. He attached the pouch to the back of his jeans and attached the case to his hip and sheathed his sword. A thought came to him and he couldn't believe he hasn't done this earlier. He performed a few hand signs, summoning jutsu. He slammed his hand on the ground, but nothing happened. What the hell? You idiot. You can't summon the toads in this world. Kurama said. Why not? Because, they're not a part of this world. You can't do any summons. Damn it. Naruto sighed once again. Then how can I get a hold of them? That could have been my chance to send a message. Naruto-san. The blonde turned around to see none other than the purple-haired beauty, Seiko. What are you doing? A smile formed on her face. I want to go with you. No. Seiko's smile faded and turned into a straight face. Naruto-san. If you have any of those memories coming back to you and they weaken you to where you can't do anything, then what are you going to do? Naruto was silent since he knew she was right, so he walked right past her and started his path to where the giant walker came from. Seiko turned around to watch him, but she refused to listen to him and went after him. Right when she was about to come right next to him, Naruto turned back around, which caused her to stop. If you're wanting to come, what do you expect to do with that wooden sword? I plan on using it like I always have been. And plus, Seiko reached to the back pockets of her khaki shorts and brought out the Desert Eagle that Kaji was given. Kaji gave me this to use. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Do you even know how to use that? Seiko grinned. Yes. You think a lady can't handle a firearm? The blonde tilted his head. Fair enough. But, that wooden sword's not going to do. He walked up to her and took the wooden sword from her. Tossing it away, he removed the sheath from his side and handed it to her. Use this. Seiko gratefully took it and unsheathed the sword. She waved it around slowly to examine it. Shortly after checking it out, she sheathed it. Thank you, but since you're giving me this, I won't be needing this. She held out the Desert Eagle. Naruto looked at it and took it from her. I really don't know how to use that. You saw how I used that guy's gun on him, right? I can only use it when I'm really close. Groaning sounds came from the path Naruto was going to take. They turned to look at the road and saw another small horde of walkers. Seiko smiled seeing how far they were and decided this would be the best time. Aim at them. Naruto grunted and pointed the gun at the horde. He pulled the trigger and not knowing how bad the recoil was, it almost made him hit himself in the head. He looked at the horde and saw that not one of them went down. Damn it. He fired a couple more times, but once again, none of them fell. How the hell do you work this thing? A frustrated Naruto asked. Seiko giggled lightly and came up from behind him. She snaked her arms around him to where she placed her hands over his own. The blonde could feel her breasts pushed up against his back and felt her resting her head on his right shoulder. Seiko's lips were right next to his ear, as she helped him with the gun. All you have to do is simply aim and focus, she whispered. A faint blush came upon his face, but he took in the words she said and aimed at the walker that was in front of the horde. He took a deep breath and pulled the trigger, as the bullet ended up right at the walker's head. The walker fell, which made Naruto and Seiko smile. All right, he said. Good job, she said. Naruto chuckled, thank you. He replied and aimed at a couple more oncoming walkers. Bringing back his bored look, he pretty much got how to use it and fired at them. Seiko decided to stay back and watch the blonde's performance. In a short amount of time, one walker remained. The purple-haired beauty saw the blonde just standing there absolutely still. She walked up to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto. The blonde turned around to face her. Last one's yours, he said and walked past her. Seiko unsheathed the sword that he had given her and then looked out at the last walker closing in on them. She walked up to the last walker and when it was in reach, she lined the sword up with its neck and swung. The head of the walker dropped to the ground, followed up by its body. She slowly sheathed it, while Naruto came up to her with a hand on her shoulder. Good job. Seiko sheathed the sword and turned to face him with a smile. You're right. Much better than using a wooden one. Naruto smiled lightly. Seiko yawned, which prevented the blonde from finishing his reply. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just getting tired. Naruto sighed since he had someone here wanting to go with him. He knew that she wouldn't allow him to go on his own no matter what. The blonde scratched the back of his head. Do you just want to head back to the house and go on our investigation tomorrow? Seiko smiled and nodded. I would like that. Naruto placed his hand on the sword's sheath and added a little chakra to it, which it then vanished in a puff of smoke. Seiko tilted her head a bit and then looked at him. Don't worry. I can always summon it back. Seiko's lips formed into an formation for just a split second. So, is there a way for us to get home faster? The blonde smiled and placed the non-loaded gun in his pocket. There is. The purple-haired beauty grinned at the slightly younger blonde. Then by whatever means, please do it. Naruto quickly picked her up bridal style and jumped onto a nearby roof. He then jumped from roof to roof, while Seiko looked down at whatever was below them. Her smile remained on her face and enjoyed being high up. The wind blew against them, which caused her to feel more relaxed, but what made her even more relaxed was when she decided to look up and saw the moon along with a few stars. The night scenery was beautiful to her. She was loving how calm and relaxing this is, and only one person she knew could make this happen. Her eyes shifted to the side a bit to see the blonde's face with his hair blowing back a bit from the wind. Sure, she has dated a couple other guys back when they were in their normal lives, but none of those guys could give her a time like this right now. None of them even bothered to just take her on a walk to see a beautiful sight. All they wanted to do was go out and party with her. Sure, she didn't mind too, but she just didn't feel right doing it all the time. She mainly just wanted to look for some alone time with a special someone and enjoy a time watching scenery. Sadly, none of those guys gave her that time. She got the picture that they just wanted to party with her and try to get in her pants. That's when she told herself that she would just remain single for the rest of her life, but now that Naruto came into her life, she slowly began to see that he wouldn't be one of those guys. She hasn't seen him try to make a move on her yet, even though she has tried a couple times. With the time they've all been together, she began to wonder if he even had feelings for her or not. Seeing how Yuki threw herself at him a few times, and seeing Naruto turn her down made her wonder if he was simply turning her down or too shy to make a move back on her. Now, Seiko was no virgin. No, the first guy she dated ended up taking that from her. She thought he was the right one since he was always so kind to her. He was always a gentleman and took her out for dinner and then a movie. Sadly, when they were about 3 months into their relationship, he ended up taking her to a party. Later during the party, that was when he ended up taking her to a private room. Seiko knew what was about to happen and she didn't refuse to do so. She thought that this guy was right for her after all. However, the next day at school, he told her it was over and left her heartbroken without even giving her an explanation. Ever since that happened, that's when she began thinking that the other guys she has dated after him just wanted to party and get laid with her. She looked up at the blonde's face again and saw the moon just above him. A smile formed on her face again. Maybe we're here, Naruto said. Seiko looked to the other side and saw that they were now standing on top of the wall of walkers. Naruto then jumped down into the safe zone and placed her on her feet. That was actually a beautiful sight, Seiko mentioned. The blonde looked at her and cocked an eyebrow. What was? Seiko smiled and shook her head lightly. Nothing. Naruto shrugged and walked to the house they were staying, with Seiko right behind him. He knocked on the door, which it was instantly opened to show that it was Kaji. Naruto and Seiko were astonished from the door being opened so quickly. So, you two decided to wait? Kaji asked. Why yeah, Naruto answered, still shocked from such an answer. Kaji backed up and allowed the two to walk in, which then he closed the door when they were. Naruto realized how quiet it was and walked to the living room to see Takashi and Kota asleep. So, is everyone asleep? Seiko asked, as she looked into the living room too. Kaji remained behind the two and yawned. Why yeah. I was about to head to sleep myself, but something told me that you two were coming back. Naruto turned back to look at Kaji. Is anyone using the bed where I used? Kaji shook his head. Everyone is pretty much used to where they sleep and stuck with it. Did Marikawa-san finish the laundry? Naruto asked. Yeah, everyone's clothes are clean, Kaji answered. Okay, I'm going to have to change before heading out tomorrow, Naruto mentioned and looked down at his still topless body. You've been out there while it's storming with no shirt on this whole time. How aren't you sick? Kaji asked. Seiko too was curious of how he isn't sick as. Well, yeah, most people would have a cold. Naruto chuckled a bit and placed a hand on his gut. Kurama here prevents that. Don't you get all comfy with me, boy. Naruto ignored the fox's rant from within and looked at Seiko. You can get some sleep if you're still tired. I will in a second. I need to talk to Kaji here for a moment. Kaji was confused as to why she would want to talk to him, but could tell it was something private since she was trying to dismiss Naruto from the group. Naruto shrugged. All right. He walked to the room that he's always been using when here. The two watched the blonde until he was out of sight, which Seiko looked at Kaji. This stays between us, okay? Kaji nodded. Okay. What is it though? Has Yuki been saying anything about Naruto-kun? Like, how she wants to get with him and all. Kaji saw where this was going and smiled. So you have a crush on him too? So Yuki has a crush on him as well. Kaji nodded. She keeps talking about how she wants him to herself for the rest of her life. She told me that it's not only because he has a nice figure, but also she said that the way he's so protective and all is what makes him more attractive. Seiko frowned and sighed. That's going to be a problem. Kaji tilted his head to the side a bit and grinned lightly. If you really want to win him over, just be yourself. Just don't be shy around him and then he'll pick it up. Look at Yuki, she's not afraid to show him anything, but if you've noticed every time she tries, you see that he doesn't show any love back. He just acts like his usual self. So why not show him your feelings? Seiko shook her head. I can't yet. You remember the guys I used to date back in school? Kaji raised his head a bit. Oh. So you want to wait and see if he's actually the right one? Seiko nodded. So far, he's what I'm looking for. But there's still more that I need to see. I see. Well, try not to wait too long. The longer you hide it, the sooner he might make a move back on Yuki. Seiko nodded. Thanks, she said and walked to the same room that Naruto's sleeping. Kaji smiled and closed his eyes. Yuki won't like this. Morning. 10:38 a.m. Elsewhere within the city on a rooftop of some building. 5 people just stood around looking around the area. The first person is a tall man standing at about 6'7". He has long spiky silver hair in a style that looked similar to Naruto's, but most of it stayed down. He has tan skin and his body is well built, also like Naruto's. He has blue eyes and this guy also usually has a bored expression on his face. The man wore black pants, black shoes, and a black trench coat that was open to show that he wore no shirt underneath. His name is Shiroi Inazuma, age 28. The second one is another man that has a pretty big build compared to the first one. However, this guy has dark skin, dark brown eyes, no hair, and has a Russian look to him. He wore black shoes, blue jeans, and a dark green with a picture of a two-headed eagle on the back. His name is Kozlov, age 32. The third one is a rather young-looking woman around the age of 20 with light skin. She has emerald eyes and long black hair, but had it tied up in a ponytail. She wore a black skirt that stopped just an inch above her knees, a white blouse that she had unbuttoned a bit to show a little cleavage, and black battle boots. Her name is Hikari Magiku. The fourth one is another man that looked to be around the age of 24 or 3. He has blue eyes, tanned skin, and has black spiky hair that mainly stuck out upward or back. He mainly kept it from the front since he didn't like it that way. This man wore white shoes, white slacks with a black belt, a gray sleeveless shirt, and a white long-sleeve shirt that he didn't fully wear. He didn't have his arms in the sleeves and instead, he wore it like a cape by only having the highest button actually buttoned. His name is Kei Suchiru. The last person is another woman with light skin at about the age of 26. This woman was from the United States of America. She has long brown hair that went down to the middle of her back and has hazel-colored eyes. She wore short blue jean shorts with a belt that held her sword to her right hip, dark brown boots, and a red mixed with white long-sleeve shirt that didn't cover her stomach. Her name is Claire. Kay sighed, "So, how long are we going to stay up here? We can go now." Whatever that was last night apparently cleared hundreds of them. Kozlov mentioned. "Good. We can't keep staying up here. We'll eventually die from starvation." Kays continued. "Where are we going to go then?" Claire asked. "Anywhere but here," Kays answered. "So you want to go out there recklessly and not know where to go? You're going to get us killed like that," Claire nearly shouted. Kays growled and glared at the country girl from the States. "It's better than staying up here." Kozlov closed his eyes and kept shaking his head, while Hikari just stood there looking down at the streets completely ignoring the fighting. "You're an idiot. Going down there without a plan is suicide." Kays had about enough and reached to the back of his pants, while Claire grabbed her sword. "Enough." Everyone turned to the voice to see Shiroi had interrupted them. "You two arguing isn't going to help. In fact, it's best you two just stop talking for a while." "What do you think we should do then?" Kozlov asked. Shiroi kept that bored expression on his face. "We're going to the Takagi mansion." Everyone except for Hikari went wide-eyed. "Are you serious? Do you even know what you're putting us up against?" Kays asked. "Yes. Suichiro Takagi, the leader of a right-wing nationalist group in the Tokanasu district. I'm aware of him having excellent swordsmanship. And I'm sure his group there are also skilled. But what about the wife? What was her name?" Claire tapped her chin, but then quickly remembered. "Yuriko Takagi. She's quite skilled at firearms. And I'm sure she has a group of her own." Shiroi narrowed his eyes. "I'm fully aware of that. But, we're going there." Kozlov had nothing to say about it and neither did Hikari. Kays sighed. "Okay. But they're going to be a major pain. Don't worry. We can easily take care of them." Naruto was up and wore his orange pants with the tight black muscle shirt. Seiko was standing at the front door waiting on him. She wore her school uniform this time and put her other outfit in the washer. Naruto yawned and stretched his arms out. As he came up to her, "You ready?" Seiko nodded and grabbed the handle. "Wait." Naruto and Seiko looked behind them to see Saya. "What?" Naruto asked. "I've been thinking. My house isn't that far from here and I was hoping we could go there. It's a mansion and my dad is pretty strong, and always has a group of well-trained men with him. I'm sure they're alive and taking shelter at home, but I really would love it if we could all go there." Naruto scratched the back of his head. "Well, I don't mind. But Seiko and I are going to do some research. Just tell the others what you want to do and I'm sure they'll agree with you." Saya smiled. "Okay." She turned her back to them, but quickly looked back at them. "You two better join back up with us soon," she said and went to the living room. Naruto turned to Seiko. "Ready?" Seiko opened the door. "I believe I've been waiting on you this whole time." The blonde chuckled. "Let's go then." The two quickly walked out and opened the gate. They came up to the wall, but Naruto had another idea. "Since they're more than likely wanting to move, I'll just clear this." Naruto held out his hand, as his sword appeared in his grip. Seiko tilted her head curious of what he was up to. "How are you going?" "Just watch," he said and added a good amount of chakra to it. He stabbed his sword down on the ground and in a split second, the wall of bodies shot in the air. Seiko looked up to see how high they went, but when they slowed down, she saw that they were raining down. Naruto quickly grabbed her and vanished. Time skip, 2 hours. Location, within the city. This scene will be reduced and changed a bit compared to the anime. Saya and the others had all agreed about going to her parents' house. However, right now, they were in a major problem. Shizuka was driving the Humvee that her friend had in the driveway, but right now she wasn't. She ended up coming to a halt since a wired fence is blocking their path. To make things worse, a horde of walkers was coming toward them. Kota was on top of the Humvee sniping them one at a time. Takashi decided to go into the horde and shoot them up close with the shotgun. Not only did he use it to blow their heads off, but he used it as a combat weapon as well. Kaji was crouching down next to the Humvee and taking them out one by one with the rifle, but when he was first using it, he had no luck of hitting any of them. Thanks to Kota's advice earlier, he managed to get the hang of it. Rei, Saya, Alice, Shizuka, Yuki, and Zeke were staying the Humvee. Kota shot at another walker, but when he was going for the next one, nothing happened. Damn it. I'm out of ammo completely. The same thing happened to Kaji, I am too. He announced. Takashi kept swinging the shotgun at them and then blew one of their heads off by shooting right up at one of their chins. Me too. He said, as he began retreating back. Kota sighed and pulled Alice on top of the Humvee. Alice, I want you to jump over this bridge and run. We'll be right behind you. No. That's what Daddy said and now, he. Kota narrowed his eyes. Don't worry. I promise, we'll be right behind. Get them out of there. Kota, Kaji, Takashi, and Alice glanced at the fence and saw a group of firefighters being commanded by a woman. She has long, light purple hair and eyes of matching color. She wears her hair down and has it much shorter in the front and pushed to either side of her face. She has a slender figure and dresses in a style which resembles the typical aristocratic attire, which consists of a thin red dress, a white cloth wrapped around her arms and mid to lower body, and a silver necklace with a small charm on the front. Come on, jump over the fence. One of the firefighters said. The group didn't have to wait any second and all got on top of the Humvee, as they jumped over the fence. Once everyone made it over, the firefighters placed the hose on the fence and shot a blast at the incoming walkers, which sent them flying back. Mommy! Saya yelled and jumped at her mother with open arms. That's Saya's mother? Takashi asked. Kaji was pretty shocked to see Saya's mother for the first time. Apparently she is. Kota was smiling with drool leaking from the corner of his lips. She's a goddess. Shizuka, Rei, Yuki, and Alice with Zeke by her side were talking with the mother of Saya, talking about how they've been living through this. Saya's mother wanted to hear more of this, but she realized where they were wasn't the best of places. Come on. We'll head back to the manor. Naruto and Seiko found themselves in front of a garage lot that's completely destroyed. They could tell that it used to be a garage due to the vehicles scattered everywhere. Next to the garage was the hospital. It seemed to look like that it's still in one piece. They walked towards the hospital and looked around as they did. With caution, they picked up the pace to the entrance. In just a matter of seconds, they were at the doors and began to wonder, where are all the walkers? Not one. The blonde looked at the glass doors and saw blood staining the floor inside. This has to be the place. Seiko pushed open the door and walked in with Naruto right behind her. Once they walked in, they looked to the counter on their right and saw a person's arm lying there. Be careful. Seiko said. Naruto nodded and walked a little ahead. Coming to a stop shortly after, he looked ahead and both of his sides to see pathways, 3 paths. We should split. I don't think that's a good idea in a place like this. Seiko quickly said. Maybe, but aren't we wanting to make this quick so we can join back up with the others? Well, yeah. But, wait a second. Naruto crossed his fingers. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 clones appeared before them. Okay. Clone 1, you go straight, and Clone 2, you go right. Busujima-san and I are going left. All right. They both said and quickly went down their assigned path. So you can make more than 1 clone? Seiko asked. Yeah. Come on though, let's get down to this. Shiroi and his group came up to a Humvee sitting in front of a wired fence. It looks as if another group came here too. Yeah. Kozlov replied and looked around to see all the bodies of the dead, and it looks like they fought these to make it over. Hopefully that group isn't from that strange shady one. They tend to part themselves and do whatever they want. Kaze mentioned. Shiroi placed his hands in his pockets and closed his eyes. Even if it is, they still can't do anything. Claire groaned, let's just go. A tick mark appeared on Kei's forehead and glared at her, quit being impatient. You keep standing there talking and not wrapping this up. Because we're thinking of a plan, you psycho. Enough. Shiroi shouted, which drew everyone's attention. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to act like a normal group of survivors wanting to take shelter for the meantime. Whenever his group decides to make a move on the manor too, we'll strike. Fine. Can we go now? Claire asked. Kei's was just about to say something to her, but Kozlov knocked him on the head. Kei's rubbed his head and glared at Kozlov. What was that for? What do you think? Okay. Let's go. Shiroi announced. Takagi's manor. Where's Papa? Saya asked. He's out doing business, dear, but he should be back here soon. Saya's mom answered. Takashi and his group were standing outside next to a fountain. Saya, Yuriko, Rei, Shizuka, Yuki, and Alice were the ones sitting on the benches discussing about how they've been holding up here and all. They weren't the only ones out front since there was a large amount of people walking around and talking to each other. Little kids were playing, laughing and playing with a soccer ball. Takashi. Kaji called out. The teen looked at his friend. What is it? How do you think Naruto and Seiko are doing? He asked and looked up at the sky. Takashi smiled. I'm sure they're just fine. Takashi and Kaji looked to see that Kota had joined in. Naruto and Seiko are the strongest of our group. They'll be just fine, Kota stated with a big smile on his face. Kaji smiled. I'm sure they are. It's just, the thing I'm worried about is Kurama. Takashi and Kota cocked an eyebrow. Kurama, that's the fox sealed in Naruto, right? Why are you worried about him? Kota asked. Because, that night when Kurama was in control of Naruto's body, Kurama was forced to submit. I'm sure Kurama isn't happy at all and will refuse to aid Naruto if something were to happen. Come on. This is Naruto we're talking about. Takashi reminded them. Yeah, but a group of Yuriko's men charged up front to the closed gate, which drew everyone's attention. Yuriko got up from the bench and walked over to the gate, while everyone remained standing behind. Takashi and everyone else could see that there was a group of 5 people outside the gate. Yuriko approached the gate with her men up front. Or any of you bit? She asked. The guy with the long spiky silver hair shook his head. We're all perfectly fine. We came here hoping to seek shelter here and assist you all. Yuriko stood there for a brief moment. Let them in. One of the men went to the side of the gate and hit the switch, which caused the gate to slowly open. Hospital. Clone 1. The clone of Naruto came to a stop from his search since a door that was half closed was the only thing in his way to continue. There weren't any windows to show what would be inside. The clone placed its hand on the door and slowly pushed it open, as he took a step forward. The door fully opened to show that the room was a complete mess. The room wasn't entirely big, but there's a desk that's completely smashed down the middle and a couple more on the opposite side. A couple of chairs tossed around, papers everywhere, bloodstains throughout the floor and walls, and a couple corpses leaning against a wall. The clone took a couple steps forward. This doesn't seem to have what I'm looking for. The clone walked around the room examining closely. After the clone gave the place a good thorough look, it dispelled itself. Real Naruto. The blonde came to a stop after feeling his clone return to him. Seiko stopped behind him and looked at him. Naruto sighed and looked at Seiko. The first clone found nothing. The second one's still out there, so hopefully he'll find something. Seiko placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder and looked past him. Well, maybe we'll find something. Naruto turned back around and saw a couple doors up ahead, one on the left and one on the right. Earlier, the two have been seeing nothing but patients' rooms, but now they found something. Up ahead, the hall kept going. Okay, I'll check the room on the left. Seiko nodded and ran past him, as she took the door on the right. Naruto walked to his door and saw that it was actually opened slightly. He placed his hand on the door and pushed it open and saw that the room isn't that big, but he did see a blood trail that led behind a desk. Calmly, he walked in toward the bloodstain on the floor and came around the desk to see a walker devouring a corpse. The corpse's legs were completely gone and its stomach was torn open. Naruto sighed, which drew the walker's attention. The walker turned around, but just as it did, it was pushed down on its back. It struggled to free itself from being pinned by Naruto's foot. The blonde turned his body to where his other foot hovered above the walker's head. Naruto lifted his foot up a bit and then slammed it down, crushing the walker's head, as blood completely poured out all around it. Naruto walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. Seiko also came out from the room. She checked, which the blonde looked at her, anything. Seiko closed the door behind her and shook her head, nothing. Let's keep going then, Naruto stated. Clone 2. The last clone of Naruto came across a dead end, but a couple doors, one on each side. The one on his right had a tag on it saying, faculty only. The one on his left seemed to be the last patient room of the hall. Pushing the door on his right open, the clone stepped in and saw that this room turned out to be a stairway. The clone walked over to the railing and looked down to see that this is a one-way only going down. Shaking his head, the clone stepped back. Okay then, he paused, but grabbed the railing, only way to find out. The clone then jumped over the railing. Takagi Manor. Takashi and the others were on the balcony looking over the courtyard and talking to each other, except for Alice since she found a bed to take a nap on. So, who are those guys? Yuki asked. Everyone shrugged. I've never seen them before. Takashi answered. Kaji stared down at the new group standing by the fountain that they once were. Yeah. But hey, did you notice the guy with the silver hair acts a bit like Naruto? What do you mean? Ray asked. Look at him. The others looked down toward the new group and mainly looked at the guy Kaji's referring to. He has that same expression. With Shiroi and his gang. Keiz and Claire were once again arguing as usual, while Kozlov kept trying to break them up. Shiroi had his hands buried in his pockets and had his eyes closed. Hikari was standing next to him and felt like she was being watched. Shiroi. She quietly said, I know. He quickly replied and opened his eyes to look at the argument going on. Keiz. Claire. The two quickly stopped their fussing and looked at their leader, which Kozlov stumbled forward a bit from their sudden stop. Yes. They both asked. Go up and meet the group watching us. Keiz and Claire didn't look up since they knew that they were being watched. Yes sir. They both said and walked to the manor's entrance. Kozlov turned around to look at Shiroi. What if they're suspicious about us? Just let those two take care of it. Takashi and the others. Where are those two going? Ray asked. They're going inside obviously. Saya answered. Another one of them is also going somewhere. Kaji announced, which everyone looked back towards the fountain to see the darker guy of the group parting himself from the other two. The darker one of the group approached a group of Yuriko's men that were talking at the gate and decided to jump in a friendly conversation. He's just talking with other people, so what? Saya stated. Saya's right. He's just getting to know people. Kota mentioned. Shut up fatty. I don't need anyone saying I'm right. I'm always right. Shizuka just stood behind the others a bit and just remembered something. Do any of you have a phone on you? They all turned to look back at her, while Takashi reached into his pocket. Yeah, but why do you need it? He handed it to the nurse, which she took it and began to punch in a number, to call my friend and let her know that we borrowed her Humvee. She placed the phone up to her ear and began waiting for an answer. After a couple rings, a feminine voice was heard. Hello. Shizuka squealed a bit. Rika-chan. Shizuka. Where are you? We're here at the Takagi Manor. Who's with you? Oh, a few students from the academy. Oh, and we met this boy when we left the academy. On Rika's end, she quirked an eyebrow. Boy. Yeah, we've never seen him before, but he's been protecting us. I haven't seen anyone else fight like him. Shizuka, be careful around him. Shizuka groaned. Why? Well, we got intel that there's some group running experiments on the dead and the results are turning out horrible. What? Naruto wouldn't be a part of that. He's young and so protective. Just be careful. I should be there in a couple days and I'll question him when I get there. Rika-chan. Shizuka called out, but there was no voice coming from the other end. The nurse handed the phone back to Takashi. What happened? Kaji asked. My friend is on her way here and is wanting to meet Naruto. The busted blonde answered. Okay. She'll like him, Takashi said. Shizuka shook her head. She thinks he's a part of this group that's working on the infected, which those experiments turned them into something far different. The others went wide-eyed. What? Why would she think he's one of them? Saya asked. I don't know, but... Hello there. A voice from behind them caused the group to turn around and see the two people that left from Shiroi's group. The group was astonished at first, but they waved it off. You're the two from that group. Ray mentioned. Kaze nodded. Yep, my name's. The woman stepped forward. My name's Claire. Kaze's anger began to boil once more, but he managed to keep it under control. And I'm Kaze Suchiru. Claire's eyes fixed on Saya. You must be the daughter of the Takagi family. Saya Takagi, right. The pink-haired girl was curious of this, but decided to hold it off and to go with it. Yes. Claire smiled widely and grabbed Saya's hand. It's finally nice to meet you. Koda's eyes were glued to Claire due to her outfit. The country dressing woman noticed, but she ignored it. Shizuka, Yuki, and Ray moved over to Saya's side, while Takashi and Kaji went up to Kaze. So, how did you and your group find this place? Kaji asked. Kaze placed both of his hands on the back of his head. Well, someone else in our group knew about this place and knew exactly how to get here. So, here we are. Did you happen to run into a lot of them? Takashi asked. Nope, only a couple of them here and there, but not many. Something happened last night and we couldn't see from where we were staying, but we did manage to see a red glow from the mall. Takashi and Kaji tensed up wondering if they knew about Naruto. We saw that too. Kaji said. Yeah, it's kind of hard not to see it. Kaze rolled his eyes. Bodies were all over the city and not to mention, that two-story giant. You wouldn't happen to know what that red glow was, would you? Is he trying to figure out if there's more of us? They're up to something, Takashi thought. Just before Kaji could answer, people on the courtyard began to gather around, as a few vehicles came driving in. They all looked down and watched what was going on. Koda couldn't finish. The vehicles came to a stop and the door to the black one up front opened. Yes. He's the former lord of Tokanasu. The head of the Takagi family. A tall man with an intimidating gaze of a predatory animal stepped out of the truck. He has orange-colored eyes and has jet black hair. A sword was tightly gripped in his left hand. He looked forward at Yuriko with a few of her men standing next to the fountain. Her men bowed their heads, while she just stared at the man who judges everything by his rules, my father. Suichiro walked up onto a steel platform that was placed in front of the fountain. The platform gave him a good height to where everyone looked up at him. A forklift came driving in with a caged walker that has black hair and wore the standard uniform of Suichiro and his men inside, which had everyone's attention. This man's name is Tetsudoro Doi. He's the former retainer of the family, which served the Takagi family. He is also my best friend. The forklift came to a stop in front of the platform, which the cage was lined up in front of him. Today, during the rescue operation in effort to save his associates, he was bitten. This is the ultimate case of self-sacrifice. What he did was something noble, something any human being could do. However, he is no longer a human. He's become something extremely dangerous. The walker lunged forward groaning and grabbed the cage, which a few people gasped. Suichiro drew his sword. That's why, he raised his sword high in the air with both of his hands firmly gripping the handle. As a man of the Takagi family, I shall fulfill my obligations of the retainer. The forklift driver came to the side of the cage and unlocked the cage. The walker lunged forward groaning once again and broke out of the cage, as it charged at Suichiro. Glass shattered, which drew most of the people's attention to the other way to see a broken bottle and a woman with a baby in her arms. She knelt down. So sorry, my baby is just. She wiped it up and looked back towards Suichiro, as she gasped, which people were astonished. They were now looking at a headless Tetsudoro lying on the platform and his head was now floating in the fountain. Blood began to stir in the water, while some people couldn't find themselves to look. This is the present we're facing. And so, even if they're your wonderful friends, beloved family members, and people you once loved, you must defeat them without hesitation. If you want to survive, you must fight. People were silenced, while back on the balcony, Saya just angrily stared at her father walking off the platform and right past Yuriko, which she followed closely behind him. Koda looked down feeling disgusted. What's the matter, Hirano? You don't look so well. Takashi asked. Swords are incredibly efficient. What are you talking about? Koda glanced at Takashi. I said they're inefficient. A Japanese sword can break if it hits bone. It's useless after slicing 3 or 4 people. Claire stepped in, which Koda looked at her. You can't say that for sure. Even in the way of a sword, numbers determine your strength. The swordsman technique, the quality of a sword is meant of strength. If these elements are at high levels, you won't lose your fighting strength. No matter how many people you have to fight against. But once the sword has blood on it, then it's impossible to. Takashi stepped towards Kota and placed a hand on his shoulder. Hey Hirano, that's enough. Kota instantly shoved it off and glared at him, don't touch me. And don't interrupt me, you can't even shoot a gun properly without being right up in front of someone. Saya had heard enough. Hirano. You need to back off. Kota ran back inside not wanting to hear any more. Hirano. Takashi called out and went after him. Hospital. Clone 2. After what seemed like forever, the clone made it to the bottom, such a long way down here. He saw that the door in front of him was slightly open and he could hear chatting coming from inside. Come on. We can't afford another accident like last night. The clone quietly approached the door and peeked through the little crevice to see some people wearing lab coats. That wasn't all though, the clone also saw a couple shady people that looked all too familiar. It's those people from that group, but what are they doing here? The clone whispered to himself. He looked closer and saw a table with a walker strapped down on it. A couple people went up to it and had a syringe in their hand. The clone tensed up, they're making them different. It quietly shouted. A clapping sound came from behind the clone, which he quickly turned around to see one of the shady people, but was instantly stabbed by a blade. Bravo, but you won't live to see. The clone puffed away, what the hell? Naruto and Seiko came to a dead end, but there was just a single door in front of them, just one room at the end of such a long hall. Naruto asked. Yeah, usually there was a guard back there preventing anyone from coming down here. Seiko answered. Then let's see what's in here. The blonde opened the door and stepped in with Seiko right behind him. They looked around and saw that this room was completely clean. To their right, there's a desk with a computer monitor on it. On the left, there's a door, but they didn't continue just yet. Strange, Naruto mentioned. Seiko went up ahead of him and saw a computer that's turned on. She walked over to it and saw some strange notes. Naruto-san, come look at this. The blonde turned to her voice and came to her. What? On here it looks like some experiment results. The blonde examined the notes closely and began to read one of them. Subject A was injected with substance B. The subject didn't seem to change in appearance, but somehow it turned out to spit some kind of acid from its mouth. That's what blinded me back at the household. The blonde mentioned, but continued on. Text subject B was injected with substance C and the subject became far more aggressive. We let it outside and it grew larger in size. The muscles were heinous looking. This is, Naruto didn't bother to finish and read the last one. Text subject C was injected with substance A and showed no sign of reaction. So, we threw it outside since it was useless. However, the men that took it outside said it began to grow like subject B, but far more and faster. They said it grew to be about a 2-story giant. There, Naruto then felt his last clone return to him and registered everything it saw. Shit. Naruto turned back around and jolted for the door they came from. Why did this come so late? Naruto-san. What happened? Seiko asked, as she remained where she is. The blonde stopped just before the door and looked at her. My last clone found where they're testing on the walkers. And not just that, those people that were dressed all shady are in on this. The door opened, but not just the door that let them in here, the other door that they were curious about opened as well. Naruto was forced to step back to the middle of the room, while Seiko looked to see that a group of those shady people came in from both sides with all sorts of blades in their hands. Bravo, bravo, Naruto Namikaze. The leader clapped. Naruto narrowed his eyes. How did you know I was coming? The blonde asked. More like, how didn't I know you were? You're the one that wants to get down to things and find out about stuff. So, I easily knew you would come. That 2-story giant was what led you here. Why are you making the dead worse? You're putting yourselves at risk too. Simple, I just want people to perish. I love seeing them be killed. Let me ask you Namikaze, have you ever killed someone? The blonde went back into his mind trying to remember and found out that he hasn't. No. I see. Well, once you kill someone for the first time in your life, you get this feeling within you. That feeling wants to make you kill more and more. So, I did. Then after hearing and seeing about this breakout, I decided to have the dead become far more. Naruto held out his hand. As his sword appeared in his hand, which the leader knew what was coming, don't even try. Another shady person came in, but with a gun in their hand pointed right at the blonde. Naruto boy, after that performance you showed me last time we met, we've got word that someone wants you captured. You interested that person so much, that we have a special test just for you. So, how about you just come with us in? The leader motioned his hand toward Seiko, which the armed character pointed their gun at Seiko this time, we won't have to kill her. Naruto sighed, as his sword vanished. He looked back at Seiko and called her to him, which she came to him. The blonde looked back at the leader, at least let me say bye to her. Very well. Seiko came up to him and looked at the blonde questioningly, what are you doing? You're not going to go with them are you? Naruto looked at her and leaned towards her ear, follow my lead. He whispered and pulled away, but then he leaned closer to her. Seiko caught onto it and leaned towards him too, with their lips closing in on each other. The leader had about enough, let's go. He shouted and walked toward them. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a smoke bomb, as he slammed it to the ground. The leader and his crew couldn't see a damn thing. The smoke expanded to where the crew couldn't even see their teammates, get them. The leader ordered, which they jumped into where they last saw the blonde. The smoke began to die down, which everyone could see now. The leader saw that his men were piled on top of one another, where did they go? The pile of men got up and looked around. The doors were shut, but then the leader decided to look up and saw a hole in the ceiling, damn it. Let's go. They're probably going to the Takagi Manor now. Outside the hospital, Naruto and Seiko were back out in front of the hospital building, we need to get back to the others. The blonde mentioned. Seiko nodded, I know how to get there from here. Good. Naruto replied and quickly picked her up bridal style, which caused the purple-haired beauty to gasp from his sudden action. He then jumped up high to the nearest roof and jumped to the next one, so on, so on. However, coming around the hospital, a group of vehicles came speeding out and making their way to the manor. Takagi's manor. Time skip, 26 minutes later. Shiroi and his group were back together again and once again, they're standing next to the fountain. Shiroi was on his phone, they're coming your way. Okay, we'll just continue fitting in for now. However, don't attack just yet. Why not? That brat's going to rat us out. We can't earn their trust in this little time. I want you and your men to go back and remain there until I say so. But what if he informs Suichiro and they come after us? Don't worry, I'll keep him from doing so, and if he manages to tell him, I'll tell you. That's when you leave quickly to the next place. A sigh of annoyance came from the other end. Fine. Shiroi hung up and placed the phone back in his pocket. What was that about? Claire asked. They should be here any second. What? We haven't even. Right in the middle of the courtyard, Naruto appeared with Seiko still in his arms. People gasped wondering how he got in here, but then Suichiro's men ran after him and quickly surrounded him. The blonde placed Seiko down on her feet, as they both stood straight up. The two of them looked around to see that they were surrounded. Stop. Naruto and Seiko looked toward the direction where the voice came from and saw Saya coming to them. They're my friends. She said. Suichiro came from behind his daughter and pushed her back a bit, move aside. He said coldly. Saya nearly tripped, but she gained her balance and glared at her father. Who are you two? The leader asked, as he stepped into the circle. I'm Naruto. The blonde said. Suichiro then looked at Seiko, and you? I'm Seiko Busujima. Suichiro felt a nerve strike. You're Mr. Busujima's daughter. You know my father. Yes, please come. Suichiro invited her, which she looked at Naruto and saw him nod. She followed the head of the Takagi family out of the circle. Naruto tried to follow her, but was still surrounded. Am I not able to leave? No. Suichiro came back into the circle. Father. Saya shouted, Naruto's been with us for a long time now. He protected me the entire time. Suichiro ignored her. Wait. Mr. Takagi. Takashi and the others came running to join Saya's side. She's right. Naruto's been with us this whole time protecting all of us. You. Children are foolish. I've got word from a friend saying that this boy could possibly be responsible for making the dead worse. That friend also told me that you came from nowhere and that no one has ever seen you around the city before. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Wait a minute. I just got back from investigating on how they were getting worse. He's telling the truth. Kaji shouted. Naruto-san and I really did get done with investigating. Seiko said. Father. He's telling the truth. Saya chipped in. Enough. Suichiro shouted and then walked up to the blonde. The men surrounding the two remained aiming their guns at the blonde. Suichiro glared at the boy and delivered a deadly right hook to the blonde. Naruto's head was forced to turn his head to the left. Father. Saya shouted even louder, while everyone gasped. Naruto looked at Suichiro, but then once again, he received another deadly right hook. Mr. Takagi. Stop. Takashi yelled and ran toward the circle, but one of the men stopped the teen. You disgust me, boy. If people are dead, why turn them into monsters? Naruto spat out blood and looked back at him. I told you, Suichiro then kneed the blonde's gut, followed by an uppercut. Naruto quickly recovered himself and this time, he caught an oncoming punch from him. However, he heard sobbing from outside the circle. He looked behind Suichiro and saw Saya crying, but that wasn't it, he saw her shaking her head and saw she was hoping he would get the message. Naruto closed his eyes and let go of the man's fist. Suichiro punched the blonde hard on his chest a couple times and then delivered a deadly punch to his gut. The blonde's eyes went wide slightly and coughed out some blood. Why does this feel so familiar? He asked himself in his mind. Suichiro kicked the blonde hard against his stomach, which caused the boy to slide back a bit, because this is how you were treated when everyone knew you had me sealed in you. Kurama answered. The former leader of Tokanasu then held out his sheathed sword and slammed it hard against the blonde's stomach. The wind was literally knocked out of the poor boy from such a hit like that and fell to his knees. You're right. I remember now. Now, these people here think I'm the reason that the dead are far worse than usual. Suichiro looked down at the blonde, while Naruto looked up at him with a blurry vision. Yeah. I told you. Suichiro spat on the ground next to the blonde and kicked his head hard, causing the blonde to fall on his side. They're no different. Time. 7:08 p.m. Kurama. What is it, kid? You're right. Kurama sighed. Naruto, back then, why did you let him tear you up like that? Because, if I were to fight back, then they wouldn't believe anything I said. I don't want that to happen. They need to know the truth. And when I get out of here, I'm going to tell them exactly that. You know, that might not be the only thing you'll have to explain. The way you made your entrance caused several questions to be asked about you. Yeah, that too. Wake up. Naruto's eyes opened and now he was looking at reality. His eyes scanned the area and saw that he was locked in the same cage as the walker that Suichiro had killed. Looking around one more time, he realized that the cage was sitting on top of a steel platform. He also realized that he's been sitting on his knees the entire time he was unconscious. Hey! Naruto turned his head to see one of Suichiro's men standing in front of him. What? Here. The man held out a bowl of soup for the blonde. Naruto tried to grab the bowl, but he couldn't withdraw his hands from behind. What the hell? You're cuffed, which is why I'm feeding you the soup, you sick bastard. The blonde held back his anger, but decided to cooperate, as he placed his lips on the edge of the bowl. The man then tilted it, that way Naruto could get every last bit of what's left. Once the blonde finished, Suichiro's dog withdrew his arm out of the cage and walked back to the manor. Remember, if you want to tell them the truth, just hold in that anger. If you let loose, they won't believe you at all. Kurama mentioned. I know. The blonde remained sitting there on his knees with his head hung low, while staring down at the base. Naruto. Naruto lifted his head up and saw a dark man standing in front of the cage. Who are you? The darker man chuckled. I'm Kozlov. How do you know my name? Well, how do I not? After all, your friends were yelling your name when that event happened. Naruto kept his usual bored expression, which Kozlov chuckled. Naruto cocked an eyebrow. What? You remind me of our leader. Leader. Footsteps drew the blonde's attention, while Kozlov stepped aside. Naruto saw a man with silver spiky hair come up to him. He saw that this guy has the same expression on his face too. The two stared at one another, while Kozlov kept glancing back and forth between them. This man here is Shiroi Inazuma. And you must be Naruto. You don't say. Kozlov here told me how pretty much everyone knows my name now. Well, let me introduce you to. Shiroi placed his hand on Hikari's head. This is Hikari Magiku. The blonde gazed to the man's left and didn't even realize the shorter girl standing next to him in the first place, and this is, two more people came in, Kei's Suchiru and Claire. Claire tilted her head a bit and walked up and got closer. He sure does act like you, Shiroi. He sure does. You both have the same hairstyle and expression. Kei's mentioned. Naruto didn't say anything and was still pretty shocked about Hikari. How did I not see her? She was there the whole time, but how did I not see? Claire smiled. He's even cute. She slid her arm into the cage and placed her hand on the blonde's left cheek. Naruto didn't say anything, as Claire then began to trace his whisker marks, and these whisker marks make him even cuter. A tick nerve struck Kei's, while the other three just stood there. He's cuter than you, Shiroi. Claire mentioned again and withdrew her arm. Claire stepped back, as Shiroi was the one to step up this time. The reason why we're here is because I would like you to join us. Why would I join you? Simple. We can get you out of there, and why not? Do you honestly want to be around these people? Kei stepped up. Yeah. You didn't deserve that. Kei looked closely at the blonde's eyes. What the hell's with those eyes? Claire shoved Kei aside and went back up. She looked at his eyes and smiled. They're beautiful. She said. Kei whipped his body back and placed his hand on Claire's shoulder. You're starting to. Claire glared at Kei. Get your hand off me. Kei grinned. Oh, are you finally ready to go? He asked, as he used his free hand to reach around his back. Claire grabbed the handle of her sword. Enough. The two looked at Shiroi and bowed their heads. Sorry, Shiroi. They both said. Anyway, Shiroi looked back at Naruto. What do you say? Naruto shook his head, while Shiroi closed his eyes. Very well. He said, as him and the others walked away. A sigh escaped the blonde's lips, as he maneuvered himself to where his legs stretched out in front of him. He leaned back against the cage and closed his eyes. Mindscape. Naruto was now standing in front of Kurama's cage. Just one whole day in here and then I can explain everything. Yeah, one whole day that we have no clue what'll happen. Kurama mentioned. Shut it. Kurama sighed. Just a fair warning, if tomorrow gets real bad, I will force my way of taking control to get us out of here. You won't do anything. You fool. Why would you let them treat you like that? Don't worry about it. Kurama growled in frustration. You're pathetic. You act so tough and all, but you're too soft. You let people like them push you around and mistreat you. Why? Why are you being so soft? Naruto stood there with his arms crossed and stared up at Kurama. The blonde didn't say anything and decided to turn his back to the cage. This infuriated Kurama, which the fox banged its head against the cage. Take this seal off and let me out. You obviously don't know what the hell you're doing. Anger like that will get us nowhere. You always want to kill and make things worse. You don't even stop to think what that would cause. Shut up. It's not like anything will happen. They'll be dead and can't do anything. Naruto placed his hands in his pockets. There's other ways to take care of situations like this. And killing could be one, but that doesn't make it right. If we're going to go back to our home world, these people deserve to know what's causing all this to happen. Once they know, then they can take care of themselves. I don't like killing people, but... Bullshit. You've killed several of them ever since we came to this world. Wrong. I haven't killed one living person. I've only killed the dead. Kurama went silent. Those people were human, but now they're not. By the looks of it, if those things bite you, that person will eventually die and come back as one of them. That's not living. They're already dead. But, we're done discussing this. Let me handle this. Kurama was once again silent. The fox just sat there in the cage watching the blonde walk off. You better know what you're doing. Next day, 10:17 a.m. Naruto's eyes opened and he first saw people walking around. He remained leaning against the cage and closed his eyes once again. The blonde just wanted today to be other with quickly so he could warn these people. Naruto. The teen opened his eyes to see Takashi, Saya, Seiko, and Kaji. What is it? How are you feeling? Kaji asked. Naruto closed his eyes and remained leaning back. I'm feeling fine. You don't need to worry about me. Saya stepped up and looked at him. I'm sorry my father did that to you yesterday. Naruto kept his eyes closed. Why are you apologizing? He just thinks I'm a part of something that I'm not. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything to him. Naruto-san. The blonde opened his eyes and glanced at the purple-haired beauty. I tried telling Mr. Takagi. Tried? Naruto asked. Why yeah. He didn't believe any of it one bit. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Flashback. Suichiro walked away from the unconscious blonde that was being held prison now. Seiko didn't like this one bit and ran up to Suichiro. Mr. Takagi, you can't do this. Suichiro stopped and looked down at Seiko. Come. We'll talk more about this. Dojo room. Seiko was sitting on her knees on a mat with a sheath in her hands, while Suichiro was sitting cross-legged across from her. What do you think of it? Suichiro asked. Seiko kept staring at the weapon. I've heard the rumor that Busujima-sensei believes his daughter is the sword user and believes that the daughter is every bit as skilled as Sanoko Chiba. Therefore, you must be a pure and graceful maiden. Even if you touch the sword directly, it won't be stained. Seiko held up the sheath and drew the sword out a bit. She then unsheathed it and held it out. While staring at it, it's truly unusual. Do you see it? It has a slightly curved blade pattern. This is a double-edged Kisaki Moroha. Seiko then sheathed it and looked back at Suichiro. I think this is a Murata sword. Suichiro smiled. Indeed it is what you say. During the Meiji era, Major General Murata, who's known for the Murata rifle, had it made at the Tokyo Army Arsenal. He cut a pig's head in half without even scratching the blade. Seiko placed the sheath down in front of her. It was an honor to have seen it, but it belongs to you now. Seiko was astonished for a split second, but looked back at him. With all due respect, I cannot accept this without a proper reason. Suichiro rested his head on his fist. Busujima-sensei has taught me many things. Accept it as a token of my gratitude. Then I shall pass it to my father. Suichiro placed a hand on his knees and began to laugh. You really are fitting to be the daughter of the Busujima family. You are very straightforward. Seiko smiled lightly and looked off to the side. Please forgive me for that. Suichiro stopped laughing and put on his serious look again. I'm certain you're already aware of this. This is also for my foolish daughter. Seiko smiled again and looked down at the floor. It's true I saved her once back at the school. She looked back up at Suichiro. If you want to protect her so much, why don't you keep her by your side? The daughter of the Takagi family loves and respects her parents a lot from the bottom of her heart. A child resembles its parents. The more reason to do it then. Maybe instead of me, you could have Naru. She blinked once. You could have Naruto-kun hold it. After all, he's the reason why we're all still. No. A friend of mine named Rika told me to hold him captive. Seiko's eyes widened. Shizuka's friend. Seiko thought. I can see how much you care for him, but. Seiko frowned sadly, but he's not. We've been with him ever since we left the school. He protected us all. He put his life on the line for us. So, why would you think he's the reason for them? I'm sorry, but he'll more than likely be terminated. Seiko's eyes widened. No. You can't. Suichiro closed his eyes. There's nothing you can do to change this. Seiko's eyes narrowed. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. She thought. End of flashback. Naruto looked at Seiko's left hip and saw that she now carried the weapon that Suichiro gave her. I see. I'm sorry Nar. Leave. Wait, what? Kaji asked. Leave. The blonde repeated. But. Naruto sent a burst of his energy, which caused the group to step back. Leave. The group looked at him and felt hurt, but then they walked away. The blonde closed his eyes. Oh. So you're going to ditch them? Kurama asked. The cuffs holding Naruto's wrists together broke. Yes. I'm going to leave them and let them realize who is really responsible for this. Oh. So you got this all figured out. Naruto looked to his right to see Shiroi's group coming out of the manor and coming towards him. Yes. The cage broke, as each wall of it dropped flat and made clanging sounds when it hit on the platform. All the people outside looked to the source and saw the blonde standing up. He broke free. Someone shouted. Suichiro stood at the front doors that led inside the manor. No. Don't let him get away. We need answers first. A group of Suichiro's men charged after him, but they all stopped once they were getting closer. They saw red aura whipping around him. What is that? So, are you going to kill them? No. Naruto stood there and glared at Suichiro's men. Don't you even try. I don't want to have to kill you all. The blonde then looked at Takashi and the others to see their shocked faces. And Naruto-san, Seiko said. Naruto closed his eyes and then hopped off the platform. Get him. Suichiro shouted. Some of his men stood there. Ground, but a couple of them found themselves to charge at the blonde. Naruto quickly turned around and held out his hand. which the red aura shot out towards the men. The two dogs felt themselves being wrapped up. What the hell is this? They felt themselves being pulled toward the blonde and began to panic. No. Please. The other one shouted. Naruto landed a deadly punch on one of them, which sent him flying back. He then looked at the other one. Performing a few hand signs, he grabbed the man's neck, as a seal appeared on him. The man didn't feel any pain from it and then looked at Naruto, but was instantly punched like the other one. Suichiro and everyone else were shocked at what the blonde could do, but that was when the red aura began to grow. It then spun around the blonde, trapping him inside. Stop him, Suichiro demanded. However, his men couldn't find themselves to go after him. The red energy then vanished to show that the teen was gone. The courtyard was absolutely silent. Damn it. Suichiro yelled in his head. That kid, he's a monster. A woman stated. Seiko felt a major pain coming from her heart. She placed a hand against her chest. He left. She held back the small amount of tears wanting to escape her eyes. Shiroi grinned lightly. This'll make everything easier. Naruto appeared on a roof of a rather small building. However, Naruto had his sage cloak on this time. So, you plan on going alone for now on? For now, yes. You seem irritated. You could say that. I'm tired of people falsely accusing me of problems. I see. What are you going to do then? Naruto shrugged. Guess I'll just help me. The blonde looked down to see a woman backed up against a wall with a couple walkers coming towards her. The woman seemed to be in her mid-20s. She wore some short white-colored shorts with a red short-sleeve shirt. She has long blonde hair and blue-colored eyes. Naruto also spotted a couple of walkers piled on someone not too far from her. He looked closely and saw that it was a man being devoured by them. Naruto looked back down toward the woman and held his hand out facing down at her. Somebody, please. She yelped when she felt that she wasn't standing on the ground anymore. Her eyes widened and then she began to scream, but she then found herself on top of a building in someone's arms. She was let free and then she looked at the person that saved her. She saw that it was a teen that saved her. Blonde spiky hair, whisker marks, muscular frame, strange outfit, and then those strange eyes of his. Before she could say anything, she began to think if this boy really saved her. Most of all, did he use some sort of trick to lift her off the ground? You should be safe up. The blonde was cut off when he felt the woman hug him tightly. Thank you. Thank you. Naruto placed his hands on her shoulders and pushed her off gently. Okay, but, he was cut off once again, but this time she lunged herself at him and began kissing him. Ha ha ha, she's already in your debt. You saved her life and she practically wants you. Naruto placed his hands on her shoulders again and gently pushed her off. You really don't need to be thanking me like that, he said with a faint blush spread across his cheeks. The girl smiled. My name's Jessica. I'm Naruto. So, what were you doing? Jessica turned to look back down at the man being devoured, which Naruto looked down too. A friend of mine and I were headed to a stronghold. We heard on a radio that the football stadium is safe. Football stadium? The blonde asked. Jessica turned to look at him. You don't know what that is. Naruto shook his head, while Jessica tilted her head a bit. You're not from here, are you? Once again, Naruto shook his head. I see. The woman said. Yeah, I don't know my way around this place. Jessica pouted, but then smiled. You should come with me. Naruto tilted his head back. And just where exactly is this stadium? Jessica's smile widened. It's about a 12-hour travel by walking if we run into a lot of those things. A nerve struck her remembering what she was going to ask. By the way, how did you do that? Naruto closed his eyes. Something I can only do. You don't need to worry about me. Jessica frowned a bit, but shook it off. So, you want to come? I would love some company. Naruto looked at her and saw her staring at him. He closed his eyes. Fine. Thank you, she said and looked past him. It's that way. Naruto turned around and then looked down at the street to see a horde of walkers. Well, we're going to avoid the streets and plus, we'll get there quicker than you think. How? Naruto bent down and held his arms back behind him. Hop on. Huh, are you crazy? Do you want to get there or not? I do, but how are you? Just shut up and hop on. The woman frowned, but she went up to his back and gently wrapped her arms around his neck. She rested her chin on his left shoulder and felt his hands firmly grab her upper thighs. Naruto shot up and jumped to another roof. Jessica's hair flew back from the wind, as Naruto kept hopping from roof to roof. How? Naruto didn't answer her and kept focusing on what's ahead. Jessica was still in her shocked state, but then smiled. We'll be there in no time, she said. Half an hour later, after jumping from roof to roof and changing directions, Naruto saw a large dome building just up ahead of him. That's it, Jessica yelled, which Naruto lowered his head from her sudden outburst. The blonde stopped on the next building and examined the dome. Jessica leaned to her right and looked at the side of his face. What's wrong? Naruto saw the entrances from his far position completely barricaded. However, his eyes looked at the top of the dome to see that the top was partially open. Hold on tight. The woman didn't ask why and simply obeyed, as she wrapped her arms tighter around his neck. Naruto squinted his eyes from the lack of breathing. Not that tight. Jessica quickly loosened her hold. Sorry. Naruto bent down and launched himself off the roof, while holding tighter onto the woman. In just a matter of seconds, he landed on top of it, which made a loud enough sound to be heard from within. The blonde walked over to where it was opened and saw that he could easily jump down. He hopped and let himself fall down into the stadium. Jessica closed her eyes, but shortly opened them due to the fact that they landed without any problems. Naruto slowly let go of her, which she got off him from his action. They both looked around to see that it was completely empty. Are you sure that there's supposed to be people here? Naruto asked. Jessica walked around looking all over the place. Why yeah. It doesn't look like it. Come on, I'll drop you off at a place I. Freeze. The two blondes turned to their left and looked up at the seats to see a man holding a rifle that's aimed right at them. I knew I heard something. Everyone. More people came out, all with different sorts of firearms aimed at the two blondes. This can't be good, Naruto mentioned. Thank for listening. Do hope you enjoyed the if and that you want the next part of this video. Like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notifications, and also check out the other videos that have created, and see you in the next video. Peace.